the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. We may very shortly be going over to Northwood in northwest London, where the Prime Minister and President Macron are giving a press conference in just a few minutes. Theo Washerwood is there live for us. He'll attempt to ask a question anyway, and will speak to us afterwards. We'll also be talking to Henry Bolton, because the big issue today is migration and the fact that the Prime Minister, despite the fact I've asked him about this on a couple of occasions, has finally now said a deterrent is necessary. We all knew that. A blind man on a galloping horse knew a deterrent was necessary. There was no deterrent. Rwanda was some form of deterrent, even though it was a very imperfect system. But now the Prime Minister has come up with something. Well, what's he come up with? 1 in 17 migrants is to be sent back to France. What do we think of that deal? We'll hear from Henry Bolton, we'll hear from you, we'll hear from lots of other people as well. Also, work doesn't pay under Starmer's Labour. We have sickness benefits to be worth £2,500 more than a minimum wage job. That is a scandal. We'll talk about that. The Conservatives, and Kemi Badenoch specifically, talking about banning foreigners from sickness benefits and saying that she believes it's nonsense that schools are banning children from playing outside during heat waves. Yes, really. You might remember that lawyer, very bombastic lawyer I interviewed a few weeks ago. He's failed in his bid to overturn the status of Hamas as a terrorist grouping. That's because it is a terrorist grouping and they're prescribed. We'll talk about the sport as well. We will talk about Jake Berry defecting to Reform UK. He spoke to Mike Graham in Morning Glory this morning. We'll also talk about Musk's new political party. It's been called ridiculous by Donald Trump. He says third parties are not a good idea. Well, he was possibly going to run as an independent candidate if he didn't get selected as the Republican nominee. But anyway, we'll go into that a little bit later on. As always, I want to hear your views on everything you hear and see today on the programme. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV or follow me at Peter Cardwell. Remember, the main number does three things. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 7. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, Dave has been in touch already on text 87222 with the word talk in your text. He says, don't start with all that smash the gangs malarkey again. I always end up imagining Keir Starmer with a ladle going out to smash potato to people smugglers. Yes, certainly. Well, the new idea anyway is this 1 in, 1 out plan, except it's more than 1 in, it's 17 in, 1 out. Britain would accept asylum seekers from France with a UK connection in exchange for returning some migrants to France, but around 50 would be sent each way per week under an initial pilot. But that's just a fraction of the numbers that have been crossing. It's interesting that more than 200 migrants have arrived in Dover today. More than 21,000 have crossed in small boats so far this year, and about 40,000 since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. We will keep an eye on the press conference, which will be happening before too long. Northwood is where it is happening in northwest London. The podiums are there, but the men are not out just yet. It was initially meant to be 3:30, then 4 o'clock. It's now 6 minutes past 4. It still hasn't happened. But in the meantime, we're going to talk to Henry Bolton, who is an international border control expert and the SDP spokesman for Foreign Affairs, Defence and Security. It's really good to talk to you, Henry. What do you make of this 1 in, 1 out plan that's not 1 in, 1 out anyway?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Peter. That's what I was going to say. Everybody's talking about 1 in 17 is being returned to France. Well, yes, but then we're getting one back for that 1 in 17. So actually, then it has zero effect on the numbers coming into the United Kingdom. And it's flawed in all manner of respects. We've already got the Italians and the Greeks and others who are opposed to this, concerned about it, because, as you know, it seems that we've got a short memory. One of the reasons that there was a campaign to leave the European Union and people voted to do so, and indeed that we left the European Union, was so that we could regain control over our borders, because Brussels, the European Commission, has, if you like, the dominant role in coordinating policy for the external borders of the European Union. France is not, it's still a member of and it's going to remain a member of the European Union, and so it does not have full control over policy on its external borders.
So within that framework, Henry, is it even worth negotiating with the French, given that a bilateral treaty is something which may not even be legally enforceable?
I've always said that we should have a slightly different approach. I mean, one of the things that I'm seeing in the last couple of days over this is that we've given the French all of this money, and Nigel Farage has said, now we need to claim it all back. We need to get this 700 and odd million.
771 million, yeah.
We need to get it back. Well, the fact of the matter is that we gave that to the French because we asked the French to do specific things. The French said, well, we'll do it, but it's not going to have a big impact. But so because we don't think it's the right approach, you're going to have to pay us to do it. So there's two sides to this story. But what we should be doing is saying to the French, look, you don't want these people any more than we do. So why don't we join forces, get together in Brussels and argue the case there and try and deal with something, with what is a more strategic problem than just simply the English Channel. But fundamentally, the approach that we've had with the French all the way along has been harmed by trying to portray in this country that we've got to tell them what to do on their borders rather than working collegially with them. I know the French. He's retired now, but the chap who was the former commander of the gendarmerie in northern France and in Normandy, who's dealing with a lot of this problem, I knew him well. The frustration over there is absolutely massive.
It's a big problem for Macron domestically, politically as well. It's a big problem for him in regard to, I mean, the actual flow of migrants across the Channel actually suits him to some degree, because if the numbers get larger and larger and larger in Calais and places like that, that presents a problem for him. So surely it's within his interests to find some sort of solution.
Indeed, that's what I'm saying. We've got a common problem here, and we need to be working together to solve it. Once these people have got through the European Union, through France, to the North French coast, then there is no way that these people are turning back. And if we were to push somehow, I mean, you know, let's put aside all of the operational, political, diplomatic, legal problems with doing so. If we were to really push these people back to the north of France, they're going to stay there and try and try and try again. The problem doesn't go away. The numbers just build up. So we've got to work with the French to reduce the number of people actually even reaching that coast, the North French coast. And I think, you know...
Should that be our problem as well as theirs? Should the EU not have to deal with that?
I think so, yes. But nobody's actually putting pressure on the European Union to do it. You know, so there lies part of the problem.
How would they respond to that pressure, do you think, Henry?
Well, we don't know unless we try.
Do you think, well, yeah, of course, but would they care?
I think they would, because it is becoming more and more of a problem for more and more of the domestic political problem for more and more of the EU member states. So I think we've got to try that. But when we come to the actual negotiation with France, you asked the very relevant question, is it worth negotiating with the French? Of course it is, because we've got to collaborate, got to coordinate. And I think there is a lot of work that we can do. But we've built up resistance in the French sort of institutions and authorities by the approach that we've taken, which is rather sort of patronizing, dictatorial, and the French don't like it any more than we would like it. But fundamentally, Macron has already said, and I think he's right, that this is largely our responsibility because the United Kingdom is an attractive destination for these people.
There's got to be a deterrent. I've asked Keir Starmer. I've asked Keir Starmer about this twice. I interviewed him for the election. I interviewed him a few weeks ago, and I asked him on both occasions, where is the deterrent? The fact is there isn't a deterrent. Both times he said smashing the gangs is the deterrent. That is not true.
No, that is absolutely not true. The only deterrent that is going to work is if every single one of these people who comes across that channel in a small boat or in the back of a truck on a ferry, because it's still around about 7,000 a year coming through on that route, the only deterrent that will work is if they are detained securely from the moment they land here, ideally on somewhere like Ascension. They are behind wire securely, and if you put every single one, no exceptions, into that situation, in somewhere like Ascension in the middle of the Atlantic, the word is going to get out very quickly that it is not worth going to the United Kingdom. There will be no 40 a week, there will be no hotel, there will be no mobile phone, there will be no free bits and pieces.
Yeah, and flight lessons, flying lessons.
Access to the black economy and so on.
Henry, we're going to come back to you in a second. We're just going to get our break slightly out of the way, as it were, now, because we're still waiting for this press conference. But we'll come back to Henry in just a second. Stay with us.
What you have to do. What is occurring here is a very real increase in mental health problems in particular, and there is, now almost unquestionable evidence that is a genuine rise in poor mental health. It is not down to over-reporting. The most recent adult psychiatric morbidity survey, which is like the kind of gold standard assessment of what's going on in mental health, concluded that categorically. So we have to start talking about the underlying causes.
But is that something a government can do about, do anything about?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we're just moments away from this press conference with this new migration deal being announced by Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron. I've actually had a tweet from Jonathan Brash MP as well. I had tweeted out, as I often do, just in regard to what was in the show, saying that Starmer finally admits a deterrent of small boats is needed. Jonathan says, has he ever actually denied this? Surely it's about the right deterrent, i.e. one that actually deters. A returns agreement is what we had prior to leaving the EU before boat crossings exploded. It seemed to work pretty well. That's Jonathan Brash MP. He's been on this show. In fairness to Jonathan, he's come on a number of times. I've replied, hi Jonathan, just in the break there. Hi Jonathan, the Prime Minister told me in 2 interviews that smashing the gangs was the deterrent. Demonstrably, that policy has not deterred anyone. But come on talkTV soon and we can talk about it. Thanks also to Angela, who's been in touch, who says it's a terrible deal. It will make no difference. The only thing that would make a difference is locking up illegal migrants as soon as they arrive. No phones, no perks, just food and a bed. We would get that if we broke into Australia or USA at Heathrow. Henry Bolton is still with us, the international border control expert. Henry, what do you expect to hear, not just from Starmer, but from Macron's side as well? What is he likely to say, do you think?
Well, I think, they're going to say nice words. They're going to demonstrate unity. They're going to talk about this, but they're probably going to divert a little bit onto Ukraine, which they've also been talking about, and unity over a strategy to support Ukraine. So I think that, this is not going to be a press conference solely about their deal on the immigration. I think it's a tense thing. And my information is that behind the scenes, that there's still some concerns, particularly from the French side. And as I said earlier, they're under certain constraints and, having to consider certain concerns from European Union member states and the European Commission. So I think there's still some T's to be crossed and some I's to be dotted on any agreement. But in general, I think, they've allowed the word to get out that it's 50 a week. 50 both ways. That's so important to notice because this idea that 17 will go back, or 17 rather, will go back, is in terms of numbers absolutely irrelevant, because for every one of those people that we send back, we will get one back here. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Peter, my experience with dealing with people smuggling, which I did for some years, I led the UK's efforts to disrupt people smuggling through the Southern Balkans, is that this will actually feed more organised crime as it develops a sort of market for people to be able to somehow corroborate familial links to the United Kingdom to get in through that, because the condition for people,
yes, and there would actually be some sort of incentive actually to say, well, if you've some sort of familial link, some members of your family here already, you would be preferred for this one in, one out scheme, which, as you say, is not a one in, one out scheme.
Correct. So there will be a criminal market opening up as a result of this scheme. So it's going to make no difference in terms of numbers. It's not a deterrent, and it's going to fuel additional organised crime. So there's nothing that is going to about this that will reduce the small boats. So they're going to, we'll see spin. We will see nice words demonstrating collegiality between the two leaders, but we will see nothing actually meaningful. Now, I hope, though, Macron might come out with, but he's had to pedal back a little bit for diplomatic reasons, but I'm still hoping that he might actually refer to the United Kingdom having to do more to make the United Kingdom a less attractive destination. Mm-hmm. When heading for 1 in 3 people illegal immigrants who enter the European Union is trying to get to the North French coast to get to the United Kingdom, it tells you there's something rather attractive about coming here compared to everywhere else. Now, that differential is something that creates the problem for the French. That is why they've got these people stacked up on the North French coast. So I can see their point of view, absolutely. If the United Kingdom was not an attractive place to come to, they wouldn't be coming here. Yeah. That's the simple fact. And that is the failure. That is such a loud, clear, obvious, staring you in the face failure of leadership from this government to the previous one to acknowledge that very simple fact. Because if they do, then they have to address it. And the last Conservative government and this government actually has to deal with people within its ranks that are entirely ideologically opposed to doing this, because to actually stopping the boats. So I don't think you asked what they're going to say. I think we'll see nice words, collegiality between the two leaders, but I'm hoping that one thing that will come out is this, that we need to do more to make the UK a less attractive destination. If Macron comes out with that, we might be able to change the narrative. Because, Peter, the other thing that concerns me about that, the narrative that I'm talking about now is one that you will agree with, I'm sure, and most people will. But it has, with the rise, and this isn't a criticism of reform, they've done incredibly well in sort of building the momentum that they have. But this unworkable scheme that they've got, it's very seductive, very attractive idea, 4-point plan for stopping the boats, does not survive contact with political, diplomatic, legal, or operational reality. And it has dominated so much of the conversation in amongst ordinary people, in the pubs, in the cafes, on the media and so on, and it's let the government off the hook to an extent, because the government's able to say, listen to these guys, totally crazy plan, and allowed them to take the opposite point of view. The real solution lies in clear thinking, clear strategic thinking with operational legal reality in somewhere in the middle. And that's what we have to do. So I've it's a noisy space, rightly so. I understand why, but it's a problem.
Yeah. Okay, Henry, thank you. That's Henry Bolton there, is international border control expert. He's also the Social Democratic Party spokesman for Foreign Affairs, Defence and Security. Thanks to everybody who has been in touch, including Craig in Sheffield. This migration deal is just totally incompetent and shows what an inept government that we have. Jane says perhaps the illegal migrants will realise the UK is becoming an unsafe country and stay in France. So many in the UK are fearful even about going out these days. Ian says, I think Reform UK should only in the most extreme circumstances take in anyone who campaigned for Remain, as they prove to be anti-democratic. Well, Ian, I think you might be referring to Jake Berry there. He was a Leaver and always has been a Leaver, so I'm happy to clarify that. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, but if it was Jake Berry, Sir Jake Berry's always been a Leaver. Leslie says, I've never heard such an insult to the people of this country with this deal. Starmer is a weak and useless leader. Dawn in Chelmsford says, the migrant agreement with France is called the Hokey Cokey deal. In, out, what's it all about? Chorus, says Dawn. Phil says the 50 we swap with Family Connection should stay with those families and not in hotels, and the family should sponsor them so they're responsible for any crimes committed. That's a good idea. Leslie says, what happens to those we send back? Are they deported or jailed, or are they free to get in another boat and cross the channel again? Well, maybe we'll get some of that detail at the press conference now, nearly an hour late. Starmer and Macron, we hope to hear from them in just a second. In the meantime, I'm going to go to Victor, who's given me a ring from Bedfordshire, 03444991000. Victor, I'm just going to apologise in advance if I need to take you off if Starmer and Macron start talking. I may have to do that very, very quickly. But in the meantime, Victor, tell us your thoughts on this.
Well, the problem starts within Europe and within the European Union bloc, because there are thousands of people being allowed to roam around from all over. I think if they deported them from there, then they wouldn't make their way.
Well, this is an absolutely key point that you make, Victor, in that you can have as many bilateral agreements with France if you want, but if if these migrants keep coming via France, well, how can France keep them out, especially if they're part of a larger bloc when it comes to migration within the EU?
Yeah, but also for people, what they don't seem to grasp or won't admit, there's not thousands of people wanting to come to this country. There are millions of people who would like to come here. It's not a few thousand, it's millions.
Yeah.
And they should actually declare, almost put the country on a war footing. It's them versus us. If you play this softly game that they've been doing, where most of them, once they enter the country, there's a 90% chance that they'll stay. They'll just keep coming.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point, Victor. Thanks for it. That's Victor in Bedfordshire. Ian's in Nottinghamshire. Same preemptive apology. You may have to take you off very, very quickly if Starmer starts speaking, Ian. But in the meantime, tell me your thoughts on this policy. Do you think it works? Do you think is there anything about it that you find convincing?
Good afternoon, Peter.
Hi there, Ian.
I've just listened to what was just said regarding the government with Starmer and that, and I'm just shaking. I do not get my head round this. So many immigrants, illegals going back to France, and they're sending, which I believe, legal immigrants that have passed visas coming over here. That's not getting rid of the problem, Peter. Now, we have got one of the best navies in the world, and we've got one of the best armies in the world. We've got garrisons that these could be held in garrisons, army garrisons, and made to work for their board and lodgings until something's sorted out. Go and clear the rubbish off the streets and that, and make it hard for them to get the message back to the people that are coming over, saying, look, this is what's happened. We're having to graft, and we're getting nothing for it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. Listen, thanks for your thoughts, Ian. I appreciate that. We're actually going to take another break now because there's still no sign of this press conference. We'll go to a quick break. We'll be back in just a second. Stephen's standing by to have a chat with us. Lots more messages coming in as well. We'll hopefully hear from Starmer and Macron before too long. In the meantime, short break.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we're still waiting for this press conference now. An hour late, it's between Macron and Starmer. We're hoping for some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. What sort of deal on migration will they actually announce? We know that some of the top brass, some of the military and border force people are sitting down at the moment. Still a bit of activity. If you're watching on the screen there, you can see a few people coming in through the doors. We're still waiting for the President of France and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom to let us know what on earth is going on and what their plan is to sort this incredibly difficult problem that is affecting both countries, particularly this country. Thank you to Jason in the Lake District, who says, in my 32 years on this earth, there hasn't been a more inept, clueless and dangerous government than this one that we have now. It's not rocket science. They simply don't have the will to sort it, says Jason. Thank you as well to many, many texters and tweeters. Hi Peter, 1 in, 1 out, 20 out in a week. What about the other 2,500 that come in weekly? Well, we're looking at about 50 a week, but still, you're absolutely right. It is a drop in the ocean, no pun intended. Rachel says, I am annoyed at this lavish state visit while lots of us taxpayers are struggling. The French have had over 700 million of our money. You're right, Rachel, it's actually 771 million. And what do we actually get for it? A land of a couple of fancy wool rugs for a couple of years. I perhaps wouldn't call the Bayeux Tapestry a fancy wool rug, but there we are, Rachel. But seriously, the situation with the boats isn't sustainable. Leslie says, what does Starmer and Macron have in common? They're both detested by their voters. And Graham and Bushy says, maybe Starmer will announce that smashing the gangs hasn't worked and he's reinstating the Rwanda scheme. I think that's probably highly unlikely. Quite a few tweets as well. Amy says, I saw an article about what Greece is planning to do about illegal migrants from North Africa. They're suspending applications and then arresting and detaining them. Greece has signed up to the ECHR like us, so it shouldn't be a problem for us to do something similar. Surely. Stephen is in East Yorkshire and has given me a ring about this. Same preemptive apology to you, Stephen. I may need to cut you off very, very swiftly if Macron or Starmer start speaking, but with that apology in mind. Oh, here's Starmer. Sorry, Stephen, we'll come back to you later on. Keir Starmer has taken to the podium now and Macron beside him. This is what they have to say.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here with President Macron, a firm friend to me personally and a firm ally to the United Kingdom. We first met in the Elysee, I think about 2 years ago, before I came into office when I was leader of the opposition. And it was clear to me then that we had a shared sense of the dangerous times that we're living through and of our responsibility to step up and to lead. We also share the fundamental belief that we serve our people better, create better jobs and opportunities, make our nation stronger, fairer and more secure if we work together. And the state visit has been a celebration of this relationship, our unique bonds of history and of culture. And today, our task is to look forward, to deliver a step change in this partnership, to meet the challenges of this moment and get the results that people want to see. Starting first with tackling illegal migration. Now, this is a global crisis, and it's a European crisis, but it is also very acutely a crisis for our two nations, a crisis of law, security, humanity, and fairness. We face a sprawling, multi-billion-pound enterprise run by organised criminal gangs, leading hundreds of people to their death in the Channel. So we're determined, together, to end this vile trade. There is no silver bullet here, but with a united effort, new tactics, and a new level of intent, we can finally turn the tables. So I'm pleased to announce our agreement today on a groundbreaking returns pilot. For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal. subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally. This will show others trying to make the same journey that it will be in vain, and the jobs they've been promised in the UK will no longer exist because of the nationwide crackdown we're delivering on illegal working, which is on a completely unprecedented scale. The President and I have agreed that this pilot will be implemented in coming weeks. Now, I know some people will still ask, why should we take anyone in? So let me address that directly. We accept genuine asylum seekers because it is right that we offer a haven to those in most dire need. But there's also something else here, something more practical, which is that we simply cannot solve a challenge like stopping the boats by acting alone and telling our allies that we won't play ball. That is why today's agreement is so important, because we will solve this, like so many of our problems, by working together. Just look at the steps the French government is planning, subject to their ongoing maritime review, to allow their officers to intervene in shallow waters and prevent more boats from launching. That is a big step, and I want to thank the President for driving it through. So this is our plan together, hard-headed, aggressive action on all fronts to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and show that by attempting to reach the UK by small boat will only end in failure, detention, and return. Second, we've also made real progress today on boosting jobs and growth, building on our new agreement with the EU. We're ambitious for what we can do together as G7 economies, close trading partners, and leaders in areas that will dominate in years to come. Together, our countries account for over half of European spending on research and technology. So we've gone further today, collaborating on satellite connectivity, bringing together our leading supercomputers to seize the opportunities created by AI and bringing down barriers to trade and investment in strategic sectors. Just this week, we've welcomed EDF's major investment in Sizewell C, which will create thousands of jobs, boost our energy security, and protect bill payers for years to come. Third, we've strengthened our work to stand together for European security and in support of Ukraine. Because I'm clear, the security of the British people starts in Ukraine. We have just co-chaired a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, including representatives from the United States for the first time. We announced plans for a new multinational force, Ukraine, headquartered in Paris, so that we're ready to support a peace deal when it comes. But while Putin turns his back on peace, we are rallying more support for Ukraine right now to defend their people and force Putin to the table. Now, as Europe's only nuclear powers and as leaders in NATO, we play a vital role in preserving the peace and security on this continent. So today we've updated the historic Lancaster House Treaty to protect our people and our way of work. This is a major modernisation. We are overhauling the combined Joint Expeditionary Force to make it 5 times larger, 50,000 troops strong, able to act across every domain. But we're going further. This morning, we signed the Northwood Declaration, confirming for the first time that we are coordinating our independent nuclear deterrence. From today, our adversaries will know that any extreme threat to this continent would prompt a response from our two nations. There is no greater demonstration of the importance of this relationship. And while we stand together for our collective defence, we must also deliver a defence dividend for working people. So we've agreed a deeper industrial partnership today to bring our defence industries closer than ever before. We're not just talking about stepping up. On defence, jobs and growth, we're delivering it. Previous governments tried and failed to secure results like this. We can achieve them now because we've taken the time and the care to do the real work, the quiet, serious diplomacy, to build proper relationships which multiply our strength and the opportunities that we enjoy. So, Emmanuel, thank you so much for being here. We represent two fiercely proud and independent nations, but by working together, we are delivering for our people, and we're a force for good in a dangerous world. Thank you, Emmanuel, and over to you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier Ministre.
Much, Prime Minister. Dear ladies and gentlemen, ministers, generals, admirals, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, I should like first of all here thank His Majesty the King Charles for his invitation to undertake this state visit, the first by a French president for 17 years, and for the outstanding welcome extended to my wife and my delegation. I'd also like to thank Prime Minister Starmer for the very fruitful discussions during the 37th Franco-British Summit today in Downing Street, and a few moments ago in Northwood. Prime Minister de Keir, as you just recalled in detail, many of the breakthroughs in which we've reached agreement, indeed defining for the coming years and decades. I'd just like to run through each of them. I recalled in Westminster on Tuesday, this state visit recalls the strength of our alliance at the strategic level and the reset around shared interests and common projects for our future. In terms of defence and security, France and the UK have in-depth cooperation with the two nuclear power states in Europe, two permanent members of the UN Security Council in Europe, the two armies that have the greatest capability on combat experience, and those that cover the high end of the spectrum, anti-submarine operations and sensitive enemy submarine hunting, as we saw earlier for the Joint Commander. Since the Lancaster House treaties in 2010, our cooperation focuses not just on equipment operations, but also on military nuclear programs. However, times have changed, and our partnership must change accordingly. Today, the question is not just a matter of having expeditions against terrorists in failed states, but to confront a major conflict in Europe involving sophisticated states over the next few years. And with that in mind, Europe must know that it can count on a strategic bullet with France and the UK. That's why we've taken the required measures outlined in the Northwood Declaration that you just referred to. On the nuclear front, we've taken three major decisions. The first concerns our doctrine. In 1995 at Chequers, we affirmed that we could see no situation in which the vital interests of one might be affected without affecting those of the others. Today,
well, that's the French President Emmanuel Macron giving his reply to what Keir Starmer had said there. Keir Starmer says it's a crisis for our two nations of law, security, humanity and fairness. He talked about a groundbreaking returns agreement. I wonder if you agree with that. He says there will be a safe route, controlled and legal, and people will be able to come across legally from France if they are asylum seekers and migrants. He talked about the shallow waters aspect of it. He said there was a failure previously. I suppose the question is, what happens to the other 16 people? Because when you get to the stage where you have one in, one out, well, on average, there are another 16 people who are coming across in small boats. If it stops the small boats, fantastic, wonderful, brilliant, you've solved the problem. But I'm not sure it does. Listening to all of this is Andrew Allison, who's head of campaigns at Popular Conservatism. Andrew, just to again, preemptively apologise to you. We're going to get your analysis now of what has been said so far. It's a bit tricky to listen just with the translation of what Macron is saying, but we're going to go back in a minute or two when there are questions at that press conference. We understand there'll be 4 questions to the 2 presidents. In the meantime, Andrew, and apologies if I do have to cut you off at some stage, what do you make of what Starmer and a little bit of what Macron has said?
Well, I can't say I'm really all that impressed by it. Immigration is running way too high in this country, and that's both legal and illegal. So, yeah, it's great to be able to deport illegal migrants, and they shouldn't have come here in the first place, and they should never be allowed in after that. But we need to bring the overall levels of net migration down, and this particular plan that has just been announced is not doing that.
Yes, and I mean, they will say that this is a solution, this is a deterrent. Do you feel there's any deterrent aspect in this?
I suppose there could be some form of deterrent aspect in all of this, but there was a deterrent aspect in the Rwanda scheme, and we could see that where some illegal migrants were heading towards the Republic of Ireland because they didn't want to risk being deported from the UK. But of course, Labour got rid of that straight away. Labour says that the Rwanda scheme failed, but of course the Rwanda scheme never really got off the ground at all.
You're absolutely right, and I think there was certainly some evidence that people were going to the Republic of Ireland rather than Northern Ireland, rather than the UK, of which, of course, Northern Ireland is part. It's interesting in all of this, they're talking about this one-in, one-out deal. My question is, and I'm going to ask Theo Usherwood, our political correspondent, who's coming up a little bit later on. He's at the press conference, he's just listening to what's going on now. What happens to the other 16 people? I mean, that is a big question mark, and Starmer did not deal with that at all in what he said.
No, he didn't. He completely dodged that, Peter. So what does happen to them? Presumably they're just going to remain in the UK for a very long time. I mean, I appreciate that it takes a while to process claimants. It's not going to be done inside 24 hours, but surely we should be aiming for more like 18 days rather than 18 months.
Yes, certainly. He says he's put more money into processing, but processing is such a big issue, and that's where these migrants or would-be migrants are essentially in limbo, staying in these hotels, annoying everybody as a result. I don't see, and I'd be very interested to hear what the Prime Minister says when he's asked the questions by the media who are there. Maybe Theo will get a question, I don't know. Is what actually happens to those other people? What happens to the people who are here already? Do they just keep processing them? And if more people come over and don't stop coming over on the small boats, I mean, he might say there's a deterrent, but he can't guarantee that. And he also has talked a little bit in that press conference about the shallow waters and the French officers who are using Stanley knives to deflate the boats. But we've seen one example of that. There may be more, but we've seen just one example of that so far, Andrew.
Well, I think that was just one example. I think they were just doing that just ahead of Macron's state visit to say, look, this is what we can do.
Remarkable coincidence there happened to be television cameras there at the same time.
Well, of course, yes. But I mean, was it a sort of a bargaining chip that Macron was using, Peter, to say, look, we can do this if we really want to, despite the hundreds of millions of pounds that you pay us every year to do our job? Was he using it as a bargaining chip before his negotiations with Keir Starmer? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point. It's interesting as well when he's talking about the fact that there are so many migrants still coming. I mean, 20,000 since the start of this year, 40,000 since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. I wonder what they will be thinking, sitting in their hotels, maybe even watching this programme or listening to this programme, thinking, am I actually at any form of risk at the moment, or is my application still going to be processed? It looks as if, for the people who are still here already, those 40,000 people who've arrived since the general election, that they are safe, essentially.
Yeah.
Their immigration status was still to be determined. They will be processed. We know that 76% of them are given asylum, and the rest, there are far fewer returned than we would be led to believe. We're told it's thousands being returned, but many, many of those are voluntary. The forced repatriation is a very, very small number of people.
Yes, you're right, Peter, and I completely agree with what you're saying. Those people will remain in the UK until their status is decided. And as you say, 3/4 of the people who do come across here illegally end up staying here permanently. And I imagine that there are some people who will just disappear. They will just leave the system completely, and we know that happens on a very regular basis too.
Yeah, Andrew, listen, thanks very much for your thoughts on that. We're going to take a break and return to this press conference when the questions come in just a minute. Stay with us.
No, and for the 2,000 whatever that we are supposedly going to send back, are they not just going to fill those spaces, as it were, with another 2,000? I mean, I really, really do not know what geniuses in Number 10 and the Foreign Office and the Cabinet Office have come up with this absolutely ludicrous scheme. Politically, it is a complete non-starter. How are they going to sell that to the voter?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Emmanuel Macron is still talking at that press conference. He's talking about Gaza and Ukraine, not a huge amount on the migration deal, it must be said. Starmer, a little bit earlier on, saying that migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. But we don't know how many of them will actually be returned. We're told it's about 1 in 17, given the numbers that are coming over at the moment. Starmer said that for every migrant returned, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally. Lots of people getting in touch about what Starmer has said. As soon as Macron stops talking, we're going to go back to the press conference and get the questions from the journalists. Then we're going to talk to Theo Washerwood. Isabel Oakeshot's coming up as well. Lots of people listening to this in terms of what Starmer has said. You've reacted as well. Rob says, Starmer's speech has left me feeling sick. Helena says, good afternoon, Peter, great show. Starmer is so disingenuous, it's absolutely sickening. This amount France has already had and yet did zero. Christina said, after a few seconds, always a load of rubbish. Salad, salad, and more salad. Simon says this bloke is just a parrot. Exactly the same words over and over again. Jane says the UK Prime Minister is not keeping his own people safe. He knows it. We know it. Then he goes on about Ukraine. He cannot protect the UK borders. The man has no shame. He should resign. And Taff in Dover says, regarding the Prime Minister's speech, does he really think that the illegals will stop coming over as there is a one in, one out policy, says Taff. I think he does think that, and I'm quite worried because I can see the flaws in this already. Tad has been in touch from Cambridge and says, afternoon, Peter. Starmer's statement smacks of someone who is desperate to save his job, reminiscent of an errant spouse who seeks to reassure us that they're on the straight and narrow, yet everyone knows they're a recalcitrant liar and cannot be trusted. Starmer has turned the UK into a joke, and for that I cannot forgive him, says Tad. And on Twitter, Tom says the point has always been that a deterrent actually works. Just 4 people were sent to Rwanda at the cost of hundreds of thousands to the taxpayer. That's not a deterrent that works. Well, in fairness, Tom, we didn't get Rwanda up and running completely, so had it been up and running, it would be very, very interesting to see whether that actually worked or not. Certainly, another person says Jake Berry is at home in reform. He was an arrogant and extremely unlikable MP, says this person. Utterly useless. His constituents agreed and binned him at the election. Farage like sloppy seconds from the Tories, and Berry fits the bill. Gravy train Berry wants back in. Well, tell us what you really think. I would say that Jake Berry will fit in very well at Reform UK. His politics are very similar to Nigel Farage's in many ways. James Cox has been in touch and says Starmer speaking publicly is simply cringeworthy. My skin crawls. His concern is for the invaders, not the lives of British citizens. Well, with the proviso that I may well have to go back to the press conference before 5 o'clock in the next 6 minutes or so, if those questions start coming from journalists. I'm going to speak to Steve and indeed Stephen. Firstly, Steve in Leeds, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you make of what's been announced this afternoon, Steve? Hello there.
Well, I think the deterrent thing, what I don't understand, Peter, is there's a deterrent already in place. It's called the French immigration system. People don't want to stop in France because of the way they treat their migrants. That's why they want to come here. So why don't we just adopt the French rules on migration? It's obviously legal in Europe. It's not against the ECHR, otherwise the French wouldn't do it. The leftists couldn't complain because it's actually being implemented by a socialist government. So why don't we just offer exactly the same in Britain as they have in France?
Well, I don't know if it does work, actually, because for the many who are coming here, there are many still remaining in France. I mean, they've got loads of migrant camps. They've got loads of illegal migrants clogging up a lot of their public services as well. I'm not sure there are too many French people who would look at the system and say, actually, this works.
Yeah, but what it would mean is it's no different to here in France. So why would you pay £2,000 to leave the French system and come to the British system if it was exactly the same?
Well, the system may be the same, but the countries aren't the same, are they? And Britain, for many migrants, is a much more attractive place to live than France. So, I mean, I can see your argument. I can see where you're going, Steve, and I think you know, it has a lot of merit. But even when you get to this country, you're entitled to so many benefits and different things that you're not entitled to in France, are you?
The French attitude towards migrants is you don't get those benefits.
Yeah.
So we'd adopt their system. Whatever their rules are with regards to somebody coming into the country, whether it means you don't no healthcare, no this, we'd adopt that. Then there wouldn't be a pull, would there? Because she'd be like, well, I don't get free healthcare in France, let's go to Britain. It's the same here, mate. You don't get it here.
It's a fair point, Steve. Thanks for it. I appreciate that. That's Stephen Leeds there. Stephen is in East Yorkshire. Stephen, are you enthused by anything you've heard today from Starmer?
No, not at all. It just sounds like an immigration hokey-cokey. And one of my questions was going to be, if they claim familial ties on the person who's come here and is going to be granted, will there be an illegal who's got here illegally? And because he's been in the system so long, he's been adopted.
Well, that's a really good point, Stephen, because if you say I have familial ties, but that person has come here illegally, been processed and told, well, actually you're a genuine asylum seeker, as 3/4 of them say they are. Some are, some aren't. I have many, many problems with the system. But that's a really, really good point, Stephen. If they're saying my familial link is someone who is, that's a really good point.
Absolutely. And I think there's been no clarification on this. And I think it's just another example of it's just a mealy-mouthed word salad that the French and the Keir Starmer have come up with. It's more or less box-ticking to pretend to do something.
There's also so many questions. What happens to the other 16 people? We don't know what happens to them. What happens to the others who come over? Are they just being kept in hotels indefinitely?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure they will be doing that. I have no confidence in it whatsoever. I think it's just a busted flush, the entire system, with them two, specifically as architects, at the top of the pile.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Stephen. Let's go back to the press conference just for a second. Macron is still talking. He's directly talking to Keir Starmer. We'll just hear a little bit more of what he has to say.
The actions that we're implementing, the last few months showed that in terms of the coalition willing that we launched together and will show in all the issues that I've referred to. And ultimately, through these decisions and this summit, we're beginning to illustrate, to flesh out what His Majesty the King wanted to announce a few days ago, this entente amicale. We're giving it content and we're sketching out and drawing this future together. I firmly believe that is the right formula. That's why we decided to adopt it and together move forward on this part of the entente amicale hand in hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. We've now got a number of questions from both the French media and the British media. I'm going to start with Robert Peston, ITV. Robert.
Hello, it's Robert Peston, ITV, as you said, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, can a pilot that will see relatively few expulsions each week really have any serious deterrent effect when there are about 800 a week on average currently crossing the Channel? Monsieur le Président, pourquoi est-ce que votre police ne fait pas plus pour empêcher les demandeurs d'asile de traverser la Manche? Après tout, vous avez reçu 700 millions de livres du gouvernement britannique. And then if I may, to both of you, I don't know if this is a lighter note or not.
Especially one question. We're on the third one, Robert.
Be very brief. I think it's not completely unfair to say that you are sort of members of the slightly beleaguered class of centrist leaders, and I wondered if you'd shared any survival tips with each other.
Robert, thank you very much for your question. Firstly, on the returns pilot, the first thing to appreciate is this is groundbreaking because this is a scheme intended to break the model and to make it clear that if you cross in a small boat, then you'll end up where you started. And the purpose of that is a pilot to break the model, and therefore, obviously, the numbers, if successful, will ramp up, but it's a pilot to break the model. That is the whole point of it. It is groundbreaking, and it's no wonder that for years, British governments, previous governments, have been trying to secure a deal like this, a returns agreement like this, because all governments have realised just how important it is. And we've now been able to agree it, and we've agreed it because we have cooperated, collaborated through serious diplomacy to get an outcome which is best for both of our countries. And so I'm very pleased that we've been able to agree this here today. Manuel.
Merci beaucoup pour votre question. La première chose, je l'ai dit, nous travaillons efficacement et nous avons des accords qui sont déjà solides. Je ne voudrais pas que s'installe l'idée que nous ne faisons pas notre travail et que nous gaspillons de l'argent britannique. Je veux d'ailleurs vous rappeler que lorsque vous mettez un pound, nous mettons 3 euros. Et donc, nous mettons beaucoup d'argent pour défendre la frontière qui est une frontière extérieure de l'Union européenne. La deuxième chose, nous avons éteint des voies de passage. La voie terrestre, la voie ferroviaire, et beaucoup réduit celle de ces small boats. Simplement, les passeurs s'adaptent et nous devons adapter notre réponse. Ensuite, je le rappelais, nous devons surtout adapter la réponse au Brexit. C'est qu'on a vendu au peuple britannique un mensonge, qui est que le problème c'était l'Europe. Simplement, en laissant un vide juridique, le problème c'est devenu Brexit. Et avec votre gouvernement, nous sommes pragmatiques et nous apportons pour la première fois depuis 9 ans une réponse. Une réponse pour permettre que des gens qui ont des liens que vous voulez prendre, qui sont utiles pour votre pays, soient admis légalement, sans prendre le moindre risque.
Well, that's President Macron there, President of France, answering the question from Robert Peston there, the political editor of ITV News, who asked it in French. We know from what Starmer was saying there, he said it was a groundbreaking agreement. In fact, he's now said 3 times that this is a groundbreaking agreement. He says it is a pilot to break the model, so they're only doing small numbers at the moment, but if it works, it will be expanded. And he says if you cross in a small boat, you'll end up where you started. But I don't think that's true, because some people, if they cross in a small boat, will end up where they started. But if it's a pilot with small numbers, how is that going to convince the other 16 people? Okay, you've a 1 in 17 chance of being sent back after a process. What about the other 16 people? And also, if they get here without being lifted by border force, they'll just disappear into the black economy and into our country anyway. So I think there are quite a number of problems with this. We're going to talk to Theo Washerwood in a second, just when this press conference is over, but and Isabel Oakeshott as well. We're going to chat to her, but in the meantime we're just going to go back to get the other questions. We've had one, which was actually 3 from Robert Peston previously. There are 3 other journalists who are going to ask questions. We're going to take those, and Macron, the translation doesn't quite work for me, to be brutally honest, for my delicate ears, because they haven't actually reduced the volume on his, not anything to do with people behind the scenes here at Talk, but the feed that's coming through. It's a bit confusing actually to listen to, so I can just summarise for you what he is saying, and actually what Starmer is saying as well. He talked about defence. He said we need a defence dividend for working people, but on the key issue of immigration, Starmer said earlier, it's a crisis for our 2 nations. It's a matter of law, it's a matter of security, it's a matter of humanity, and it's a matter of fairness as well. He says this is a groundbreaking returns pilot, and people will be detained and returned through, and people will come from France. Basically, if you're an illegal migrant, you arrive on our shores through this scheme, small pilot at the moment, you'll be returned to France, and one person who is a legitimate person coming across from a safe route, that will happen if they have links to family here in the UK. But so many questions about what these links to family actually mean. What about the people who've come here reasonably and legally anyway? And Starmer has talked about that for every migrant returned, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally. Yeah, but what about their family links as well? That's a big question as well. So we haven't got to the bottom of that. We haven't managed to answer that question. That hasn't been answered in this press conference, nor has it been asked so far by the one journalist who's asked questions. Macron, I think, possibly finishing up now. Let me just read a couple of your messages before he does finish. Jane says, Starmer signs another agreement, no scrutiny. What is in it? What does it mean? How much does it cost taxpayers? Jane, we're going to ask all those questions as time goes on. It is only half an hour old. Believe me, we will get to the bottom of all of that. Monica in Sheffield says, is a groundbreaking model now, is that instead of smashing the gangs? Another very, very good question. Leslie says, I'm sickened by the love-in by Starmer and Macron, all the hugs and backslapping, it's all very toe-curling. Well, yes, it is, and I think that we often see these when these leaders actually see one another, and of course Macron has been feted over the past few days. Millions of pounds have been spent on all sorts of things for this state visit. We know as well that there are many French journalists there, and I think, oh, here we go, we'll go back.
Third bit of your question. It is the mission of this government and my mission to re-engage and to re-establish our place on the global stage through cooperation, serious, a quiet diplomacy to get results for the British public. And that's the way we've gone about our business, and that is exactly how we've come to the agreement we have today on the returns agreement. But can I just add to something Emmanuel said, because I think this is really important, because irregular migration is a serious problem across the world, across Europe. It is a common problem for all European countries. It is now on the agenda of practically all European meetings in a way it simply wouldn't have been years ago, but it requires a serious, pragmatic response. Not the politics, the performative politics of the easy answers. And it is very important that we are able to show collectively, the two of us as leaders of two great nations confronting this threat, that social democracy can prevail and provide the answers to these serious problems, because otherwise the easy answers get an airing. And it is of some significance, I think, that whilst we have been working hard to get the returns agreement, others have been simply taking pictures of the problem. And that is where the politics is. It's this, we have to show that pragmatic politics is the way to deliver the results which matter for both of our peoples. It is important to the UK and to France, but it is really important in this age that we show that social democracy has the answers to the threats that we face across Europe and across the world. Thank you, Robert. I'll go to Stefan, please, from The Times.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Stefan Boscher from The Times. Firstly, are you able to give a guarantee that this deal will not be caught up in the courts and will not become another Rwanda that never happens? And secondly, how will the 50 or the roughly 50 people a week who are sent back, how will they actually be chosen from the UK? I mean, there's 800. How are you going to choose just the 50? And Mr. President, how committed are you to making sure that this pilot scheme actually becomes a full-blown scheme and that the numbers dramatically increase? And just lastly, if I may, you've said during your opening address that since January the numbers have dramatically risen, and they have. Whose fault is that, yours or the man standing next to you?
Stefan, firstly, in response to just the last bit of your question, we both have a responsibility together to solve this. And one of the problems, to my mind, in the past has been the finger-pointing, the blame game, the megaphone politics, which has achieved precisely nothing on this and many other issues, which is why we've never engaged in it. It is why the EU-UK reset was a success, because I said at the outset we're not going to engage in the politics of finger-pointing, blaming and going to the nearest microphone to disparage our partners. And it's exactly the same approach that I take with Emmanuel on this issue. It is both of our responsibilities. I'm not going to descend into this issue of the politics of the past, which really didn't work and didn't deliver for the United Kingdom and didn't deliver for France or the EU. On the question of the pilot itself, it will be operationalised in coming weeks, so that is a good thing. It is, of course, a pilot. It is there to prove the concept that if you come over by small boats, then you will be returned to France. Of course, being a pilot, it is very important that it works, and we need to make sure that it does work. And if it works, what it does is break the model, and that's the only way in the end to stop this vile trade. And so that's why this is a real breakthrough moment today. As I say, many governments have tried to get this far and have failed to do so. In terms of those that will be returned, I'm not going to go into the details of that, because that has the potential to undermine how this will operate. But it is important that we see this for what it is, which is a real breakthrough in the way that we tackle the vile trade of people smuggling. Manuel.
No, I totally agree. No finger pointing, and we work closely together. And the only way to be efficient is to work together, because you should not underestimate the impact this situation has on the northern part of France. And I think it's very often underestimated in your domestic debates. But it's not a gift for Calais, Dunkirk, and a lot of cities in France to have all these illegal migrants. And even when you go to these migrants and offer them asylum in France and some solutions, they just refuse. They want to cross the channel. So we have no other options than working closely together. And this is not an easy situation for French people and all these cities. And I want to thank all the mayors and population on north of France for their contribution to this common work. Second, what is very important to understand is this is a collaborative, cooperative and comprehensive plan, working from the origin country, the increasing and the adaptation of our bilateral action, and the fight against precisely this illegal situation on your soil. And this is the efficiency on this new plan, and I'm totally committed to make it work, because this is clearly our willingness and our common interests. And this pilot project, I wanted to insist on one point. This is a deterrence effect. And beyond the figures you mentioned, the point and what we want to do is precisely to have this deterrence effect vis-à-vis all these smugglers and all the traffickers, in order to send a message that we are efficient and they have no more interest to try to play with the rules.
Thank you so much. I'll go now to Christelle, if I may, from France Television.
Président, la première question s'adresse à vous. Vous envisagez donc une réponse?
Right, I'm not going to be able to translate that question from the French television journalist. Very interesting to hear Macron speaking in English there, talking about a collaborative bilateral action and how this is all going to work marvellously. Very few details from Starmer there, and actually he said it would be wrong to give details of all of this in terms of how it's going to work, because that might undermine the process. I'd quite like to know the details, and I think those questions are going to continue, not least from Isabel Oakeshott, who is our international editor, who's with us now. Isabel, are you convinced by this? Is everything going to be absolutely fine as soon as this pilot starts?
Good afternoon.
Hi there.
Look, I share everybody's desire for a solution, any solution that stops the boats. But announcing a pilot scheme in which a fraction of those who come over will ever actually be sent back from whence they came misunderstands the risk-taking personalities of people who jump on board inflatable boats to cross the channel. You know, these people are enterprising enough to have crossed continents to get as far as Calais with a dream of a new life in the UK. And they're not put off by the possibility of drowning in the channel. They know at the moment the statistics are basically, I don't know, I'm making this up, but near enough, probably 95% chance, if not 100, frankly, that they get to stay in the UK. Now they're going to hear that there may be some weird one-in, one-out scheme. It's a bit of an experiment by the British, perhaps as a 1 in 10, maybe, if we're being generous to Starmer, chance that they will be one of the few that is picked out to go back to France. I think they're going to take their chances, aren't they? I don't think this is going to stop the boats anytime soon.
Well, also, if you are one of the 1 in 17 or so, or the 1 in 10 that are actually picked out of this and sent back to France, well, you'll still be in France. It won't be that bad. You'll be in France. Right. It's not as if you're going to be sent back to Eritrea or Pakistan or wherever you're coming from. You're just going to be sent back to France. And in theory, if you slip through the net, then you could try again and come across in the small boats.
100%. I mean, we know already that those that gather at Calais often make multiple attempts before they actually make a successful crossing, not because the French police are very energetic and stop them, but stuff goes wrong. You know, they may be scheduled to go on a particular departure. It doesn't happen. You know, boats, much like trains, can get cancelled because of bad weather or lack of people smugglers that day. So these people are well used to giving it multiple goes. You know, you speak to a number of them and you find that they've made multiple attempts all the way along their journey. They're used to being turned back. They're used to setbacks. You know, frankly, good for them. These are enterprising people and they've got every reason to try to come to the UK and build a new life. So I'd be the first to be joyful if this scheme actually worked. But the only way it works is if it's 100% guaranteed that you are sent back where you came from. And that shouldn't just be France, but back to your country of origin.
In fairness to some of the journalists there, they were giving a bit of a going over and asking good questions. I thought Betty's been in touch to say the press are really having a go for a change. Our own Theo Wisherwood is there, and we're going to speak to him when the press conference is over. But there's still an awful lot of detail not being given in this press conference, Isabel. We also know that even when Starmer was asked how are these people going to be selected, which is a really good question, he said, well, I don't want to go into the details of that. Why not?
He doesn't know the answer. Look, you can come back and replay this clip in a few months' time, and if I'm wrong, then I will accept it and take it on the chin. I confidently predict that this will not stop the boats and that it will prove to be a complete shambles. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. But here's the thing. I really, really object to Keir Starmer taking some kind of moral high ground, as he has done during this press conference. And I know what he was saying. So he's made two references in the last 10 minutes to Nigel Farage. He didn't name him because obviously he doesn't want to give him any free publicity. But he made one reference about, I'm not just, someone who's rushing for the microphone.
Macron also said that British people were sold a lie with Brexit.
I didn't hear that, Peter. I must have switched on at a different time. Some of the translation was a bit murky, as you said.
Sure.
That's a whole other topic. I just want to stick to the absolute brass neck of the Prime Minister going up there behind the podium and criticising Nigel Farage, who is the single political figure who has done the most to expose the scale of this disaster. And if Labour had been listening years ago, when Farage pretty much single-handed was out on fishing boats himself in the Channel exposing this problem, then maybe Labour would have had a workable solution when they eventually came into office. But I found there's something really nauseating about the Prime Minister, who has failed and failed and failed again for the whole of the last year. He has failed to tackle this problem, and he has the brass neck to stand up there and play the kind of the big serious grown-up in the room who's not rushing for the microphone and doing publicity stunts, which is effectively what he accused the Reform leader of doing. I think that is absolutely outrageous.
And on that point about Macron saying the British people were sold a lie with Brexit, particularly on migration, taking back control of our laws, our money and our borders, what do you make of that, Isabel?
What I make of that is that people like Macron have gone out of their way, EU leaders like Macron have gone out of their way to make Brexit as difficult as possible for the British people, to thwart the attempts of governments to actually make a success of Brexit. Brexit, in my view, and I think in the view of probably many, many millions of British voters now, perhaps at least as many as voted for Brexit, still believe that it was the right thing to do in principle. And if we weren't out of the EU, then we wouldn't actually have quite the ability to come up with imaginative schemes to get migrants back. And I'm not giving Starmer any credit for that, but we can go our own way on this if we actually had the guts to do so, because we're not part of the EU anymore. British people were not sold a lie. What they did totally underestimate, I think, voters, is just how vindictive and petty and determined EU leaders were to ensure that no other country could look at Brexit and think that's a great idea.
And on that note, actually, of the EU, do you think there's actually any point, really, having a bilateral agreement with France when, of course, there are so many EU regulations and laws that they could supersede? I mean, one of the questions from one of the journalists there said, is this not going to get caught up in the courts? What about human rights lawyers? There'll be all sorts of challenges to this, Isabel, won't there?
There always are. There always are. I just don't think it's going to work. I think Starmer is increasingly desperate. He's got to be seen to do something. Clearly, smashing the gangs hasn't worked. This makes it sound like they've got something. They've got an idea, just as Rishi Sunak had the Rwanda scheme. It gives him and his ministers something to say, because they all now realise, of course they do, that just continually talking about smashing the gangs is getting really embarrassing, especially when your own, sort of independent borders commissioner says it's not going to work. So they've had to come up with something else. Let's see where we are in 3 months' time. I strongly suspect that nothing will have changed. There'll be one couple of symbolic returns of migrants. As far as British voters are concerned, this only works if it becomes such a deterrent that no one else comes over. There's no benefit to us to just swap one type of migrant for another.
One side issue from Howard in Suffolk, I wonder what you make of this. Do you think it's a coincidence that the lectern, the colours of the little signs on the front of the lecterns for the summit are turquoise, which is of course very closely associated with Reform UK? Isabel, Howard has brought that to our attention from Suffolk. I wonder what your perspective was on that.
Well, so many voters want to go that colour, don't they? I don't think there's any. I'm always thinking it's just a cock up, isn't it? There's no consistency there. These people are not strategic enough. If they were that smart, they would replace Keir Starmer with someone who doesn't sound like a robot. Replacing the colour on the lectern is not going to make the Prime Minister anything less of a complete and utter failure and an embarrassment to our country.
Tell us what you really think. Isabel Oakeshott there, Talks International Editor, thank you very much for giving us your thoughts there. Starmer is still speaking. We think the press conference is ending very, very shortly. Let's just hear a tiny bit of what he has to say before the break.
To be done now and not after the event of a ceasefire. We've got the headquarters established.
He's just talking about Ukraine there.
In Paris, and there is a command structure in place, which is one of the most important things for any operation. And so that is significant, and I think also significant in the Coalition of the Willing that we had US senators and representation there today. On the separate question of recognition of Palestine. Let me start by saying that the situation in Gaza is utterly intolerable, and we need a ceasefire. We need aid to go in at volume, at pace, in a way that simply isn't happening on the ground at the moment. And of course, we need the hostages to be released. They've been held for a very, very long time. And so we must get to that. It has been the long-standing policy of the Labour Party and of this government to recognise Palestine as part of the process, and that remains our position, not least because I do not think it's possible to have a lasting peace in the Middle East if we don't have a two-state solution. But the focus now has to be unrelentingly on getting the ceasefire that will allow the space for the politics to take over from the fighting, and allow the space for the aid to get in and for the hostages to get out. And Emmanuel and I, as you can imagine, talk about this and many other issues to align our thinking and walk forward. Thank you very much indeed.
So that, we think, is the end of the press conference now between Macron and Starmer. We'll be hearing analysis from Theo Usherwood very soon. Your analysis is of course very important too. What do you think of this migration deal? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text, or send me a voicemail, or give me a ring, or send me a WhatsApp text message on 0344 499 1000. The two men are having this weird kind of sort of fist thing. Basically, they're sort of holding each other's arms in a strange kind of lock. And the press conference is now over. We'll get analysis from Theo Usherwood. As soon as he can get out of there and get on a Zoom, we'll talk to him, and we'll talk to you too after the break. That number again, 0344 499 1000.
I do think those of us who care passionately and deeply about this country, we've got one last big job in us, one last duty, and that's to get behind reform and try and improve Britain.
And you can feel the change, and you can feel, I mean, every day we talk to people, as you know, on this show, who call in with their stories and their experiences, and a lot of people now use the word, it's unfair to me. They say it's fairness that they're bothered about, because under Labour, you know, I don't think anybody quite can believe how bad they are. I mean, we all thought they'd have policies that we might not agree with, but the incompetence, the sheer incompetence of what's happening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, in some ways, quite a lot has happened over the last hour, and in some ways, very little has happened. Keir Starmer has been, alongside Emmanuel Macron, announcing a new migration deal. This is what he said. We're going to get analysis from the Deputy Political Editor and Economics Editor of The Sun, Ryan Saby, in a second. But let's just hear and remind ourselves what the Prime Minister said at this press conference.
So I'm pleased to announce our agreement today on a groundbreaking returns pilot. For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally.
This leaves me with loads and loads of questions. We also heard from President Macron, who said that the British people were sold a lie with Brexit. We've spent millions on the state visit. Is this it? Is that all we get? Is that the best they can come up with? There's so many questions. How are these people going to be selected? Keir Starmer was asked about that. He said it'd be wrong to give the detail about it. Does he not know? Why won't he give us the detail? Who will these people be who are selected? If they're sent back to France, is there no way they can attempt to come back to the UK? These familial links, really good point from Steve a bit earlier on the phones, who said, well, hold on a second. If these people have familial links, if they're family already in the UK, what if those people haven't arrived here legally? There's so many questions. We just haven't got the answers for just yet. Let's see if we can get some, perhaps from Ryan Saby, who is Deputy Political Editor and Economics Editor of The Sun. Ryan, I don't know about you, but I'm left with loads of questions on this. Are you?
Yeah, I think the biggest question is, as you say, who is going to be selected for this to actually come over here? What is the criteria? What is the eligibility? So I think that is one big thing to find out. And I think we'll probably see that in some of the small print and the fine detail in the coming days. And I think one of the interesting things as well, what Keir Starmer said, he said that this would happen in short order. Now, is some of this going to be tied up in the courts with people being sent back to France? What does short order mean? It's a little bit, when things get kicked into the long grass, when do they get kicked into the long grass too? Now, the thing for Keir Starmer, things have to happen pretty quickly. He's rolled the dice on this this afternoon. Now, the numbers, it could be 50 or so a week that go back. And he says this will be a pilot scheme and this will break that model. But it's got to ramp up, and it's got to ramp up quickly because his political opponents are breathing down his neck.
It's very true, and I wonder when those 50 a week actually start, where they come from, where they go, and also this familial link. Loads of different questions about that as well. If the family are they here legitimately? Have they come across in small boats? Are they people who themselves have gone through processing? A lot of details still to come out in all of that, Ryan.
Yeah, no, Sir Keir was sort of trying to point out there that it will be a safe and legal route for those people to come over. But has everyone got their paperwork in place? How do you prove it? It's very difficult sometimes for people to prove that they have a relative. It may be a distant relative in this country that they've been trying to join up with and meet up with over the years.
And also, what happens if those relatives have a criminal record? What if they're not employed? What if they are people who are receiving benefits because they're not working for whatever reason? There are lots and lots of questions about this, and I think people like you at The Sun and others are going to be looking into the background of all of these migrants and the people who are there already, saying, well, should they have a right to come to this country? In terms of the visit itself, what do you think we can look back on the state visit and say, right, that was achieved? I mean, they've got this deal. Many questions about whether it's actually going to work or not. What's your gut instinct, Ryan?
I think we've just got to let's see how it works in action. Sakir, just there in his press conference, he talked about others talking about megaphone politics, making a clear jibe. Nigel Farage, how he was just talking about this, but hasn't actually really suggested anything that could work. And Keir trying to say that he's used his diplomatic, actions this week to actually get some kind of deal over the line. And we saw Nigel Farage out there this morning in the channel and actually taking video and pictures of those migrants, and he actually came across a migrant boat that was crammed with 70 people, and actually said other people are just taking pictures of what's going on. I'm taking action. So let's just see what happens. Now, the concrete things from this week are going to be this small boats deal. It also looks like that on the nuclear deterrent, there'll be a degree of cooperation between the two countries. But let's just see what happens on that small boats. The numbers are small, and I think Sakir has said this is a pilot scheme. It's going to be 50, just so they can break that business model and break those people smuggling gangs and actually break their model. But I think what he's got to do as well, and he did hint at this and talk about this in the press conference just there, the government are going to be tackling illegal working in this country. So I think there's a two-pronged offence. You actually stop the people from trying to come over by saying that you are going to be sent back to France straight away. And on the other hand, if they've got nowhere to work in that black economy, they're not going to be coming over here as well. So yeah, I think it needs to work hand in glove.
And in fairness and in practicality, that should have been working already, because if it is illegal, I mean, they can talk about their deals with Uber and Deliveroo and all the rest of it in terms of these people who are not working here legitimately. But I mean, if they have this unprecedented crackdown, maybe it'll work. But I think you and I both know that if people are working in the black economy, I mean, that shouldn't happen already.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the other point, we look at, 20,000 people have come over this year, 40-odd thousand since the election last year. I was at an event with Chris Philp just this afternoon, and he was talking, this is really about 17 in, 1 out. It's that kind of situation. So the chances of actually this working or being working in a way that is actually effective is, again, very, very slim. But as Sakir said, this is the pilot scheme, and let's see it ramp up in the coming in weeks and months. Let's hope it's working within weeks and months. He says short order, as I say. Let's just see what that actually means in practice.
And just finally, Ryan, what did you make of Macron when he said that British people were sold a lie with Brexit? That's very strong language there from him.
Yeah, I don't think that was particularly helpful for Sakir Starmer. One, I think people did vote to obviously take back control and actually get on top of the borders situation. But I think Sakir just wanted to take this deal as it was. He didn't want Brexit brought into this at all. So now that is just going to inflame tensions yet again. And I think if Sakir could just walk away from those comments, he would do. But unfortunately, I think that's going to hang around for a long, long time.
Ryan, thank you. That's Ryan Saby there, Deputy Political Editor and Economics Editor of The Sun. We'll hear from Thea Washerwood, who was at the press conference, in just a few minutes. Lots of people getting in touch as well. I promise you we will take many of your calls between now and 6 o'clock, and indeed between now and 7 o'clock. Lots of that coming as well. Let me just read out a few messages before the break. David in Worcestershire says this returns pilot is all about cooperation with the EU and rejoining the EU. They will slowly show that working together is better for Britain, and rejoining is the answer to everything. thing. James in Devon says, so Starmer says we don't want a blame game or finger pointing for irregular migration. I think he means illegal. Yet Macron spends most of his speech telling us off for Brexit, and it's our fault that they can't stop boats leaving a beach, says James in Devon. I think those points are very, very fair. We'll hear more analysis from Theo Usherwood at the press conference in just a few minutes. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we'll talk to Theo Usherwood in Northwood in northwest London shortly. Let's just remind ourselves of the migrant deal that Starmer set out. We'll just get the clip of...
So I'm pleased to announce our agreement today on a groundbreaking returns pilot. For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally.
Keir Starmer there chatting earlier on. He also talked about the crackdown on migrants working in the black economy. This is what he said about that.
The jobs they've been promised in the UK will no longer exist because of the nationwide crackdown we're delivering on illegal working, which is on a completely unprecedented scale. The President and I have agreed that this pilot will be implemented in coming weeks. That is why today's agreement is so important, because we will solve this, like so many of our problems, by working together. This is our plan together: hard-headed, aggressive action on all fronts to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and show that by attempting to reach the UK by small boat will only end in failure, detention, and return.
Well, thanks to everybody who's got in touch about this really important issue for our country. Is this any form of solution? Nicola in Norfolk says, as usual, Starmer plays his usual game of spouting a few key buzzwords of the day. Today, it's groundbreaking agreement. You're right, Nicola. He said that 3 times. I counted 3 times anyway. Maybe he said it even more times. And breaking the model and repeating then multiple times, but in a different order to sound as if he's saying something when in fact he's saying nothing at all. It's truly pathetic. Dawn says the fantastic new migrant plan will have the wildebeest effect. The herd wanders past. Well, the lions get one of them. The rest are relieved. Same for 1 in 17 migrants, says Dawn. Mick says Starmer gives more to the EU. Command HQ to be in Paris after France was reluctant to give Ukraine equipment. We pay. Macron puffs up. Mugged again. And Treacle in Bridgend says, hi Peter, why should we pay or be bothered about illegal migrants and worry about the impact in northern France? Maybe they should pull their finger out and sort out their borders so they don't come into France in the first place. Let's speak to Carl in Leicester. He's giving me a ring on this, 0344 499 1000. Carl, what do you make of it?
Hi Peter.
Hi there.
What a load of waffle to start off with. You know, my main concern, and I think nobody's really talking about this, is this one in, one out policy. They've given us no numbers on what this will catch anyway. And let's be fair, this will all be watered down in 2 weeks and it will be forgot about by Keir, who changes his mind left, right, and centre. Well, you know, one in, one out, it doesn't change the impact it's already having on the NHS service, on the benefits system, on the housing issue and the housing crisis that we've got in the UK. My view is we've already taken our fair share of migrants into the UK from countries that are, you know, war-torn. This one-out, one system does nothing for the British citizen. It doesn't change what's happening. I think, like one of your left callers says, the one lying for the many passing.
Yeah, I think all of that makes sense, Carl. And the question, I suppose, is will this in any way act as a deterrent? That's the plan, that it acts as a deterrent. Do you think it will succeed?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I think like most people, I would look at, you know, does Keir Starmer stick to anything he says, and otherwise, you know, yeah, it's a deterrent for now, but what is the real deterrent? You know, how you know, people are throwing their documents overseas, they're coming in boats, they're coming in wagons. Really, I don't think it's enough. I think it's again just a people-pleasing policy. I don't think it's anything that's going to actually have any kind of body to it. And I think again, like most things that have happened this year with Keir Starmer and that government, it'll just be he's shouting these numbers just like, you know, we need to prepare for war. We've heard nothing about that over the last weeks. You know, he doesn't announce it. Nothing said about it. Yeah, there's nothing said about it. It's all pompous for Macron. And like last caller said, this is all just a way of getting us back into the EU.
Well, let's hope it isn't, Carl. And certainly when Macron was talking there and said, you know, that we were sold a lie over Brexit, I thought that wasn't helpful at all. It was a pretty disgraceful comment, actually. Although many people do feel shortchanged by the Brexit that was actually delivered. But whose fault's that? Well, I think it's probably the EU's fault, and quite a number of weak politicians here as well in the UK, some of them Conservative. Let's speak now to Theo Washerwood, our political correspondent. He is at the press conference. Theo, many questions still to be answered, and not a lot of answers there from Starmer. It's what civil servants call high level. That means basic. And certainly when Keir Starmer was pressed for some details about, for example, how these people are even going to be selected, he said he wasn't going to go into that detail. It was frustrating for us sitting here in London Bridge. What was it like for you, Theo?
Yes, there are only two questions to each side in terms of the media, and of course Keir Starmer said that we'd send one migrant back to France, and then we would take somebody who had been properly vetted. But there was no proviso, which is what been briefed before today's press conference, about whether they need to have any familial ties to the UK whatsoever. That did not seem to be a proviso. The other question mark that was contained within what Emmanuel Macron, the French president, had to say was, he said in an answer to one question that he would have to negotiate and rejig his agreements with nations like Spain, Greece, Italy, whose border is on the southern edge of Europe, and that's where people first arrive. Because, of course, under this agreement, the migrants that are deported back to France are not going to stay in France. There's the Dublin Convention within the EU, and they are then going to be sent on to the country in which they first arrived. And of course, we know that those countries, including Cyprus and Malta, have already written to the European Commission to say they're very unhappy about this deal, Peter, because they fear that they're going to have to bear the brunt of any migrants that's deported from the UK to France, because that's inevitably where they're going to end up. So there's plenty, of course, to be thrashed out as part of this deal, and plenty of detail to come out, not given the fact that, of course, we've got 44,000 migrants across the Channel since Labour came to power. That number is expected to exceed potentially 70,000 between now and December for the entirety of 2025. And this amounts, just on the current trajectory of 1 in 17, it could even be much higher. So this is, Nigel Farage, when he was sitting in the English Channel earlier today on a board ship, he may have been just pointing the finger and watching, as Keir Starmer said in a thinly veiled remarks about the leader of Reform UK. But he does have a point to say that actually this is not going to.
Oh, we just lost Theo there, but I think his points were very, very good ones, actually, in regard to the fact that this is complicated. He mentioned Spain and Greece and Italy there, and the fact that Macron is now going to have to go and renegotiate a load of other detail in regard to this. And certainly it's fascinating to see that, Cyprus and Malta, who Theo mentioned there as well, they're annoyed about the migrants they're getting back. So Macron can have as many deals as he wants with Starmer, but the fact is it going to work on his end? From Starmer's perspective, he says it'll work on this end. I don't think it will, but he says it will. He wouldn't give the level of detail, even from those few questions that he took at the press conference from UK and indeed French journalists as well. But still, we're asking loads more questions in regard to all of this. We'll try and get a few answers. We'll see what you think as well. 0344 499 1000. Let me know what you think about this. We'll take some calls in just a few minutes here on Talk.
I lost my seat back in just over a year ago now, where I was sort of talking to friends, I was talking to my family, and we were having long discussions about, Britain is so broken. Maybe we should think about leaving. And in fact, lots of my friends have left the country. We saw those extraordinary figures.
We all know people
16,500 people in the last year. And I've always cared deeply about Britain, the community. That's why I first ever stood for Parliament back in 2010. And I thought, no, I want to fight. I want to stay. This is my country. I love my country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of people getting in touch about this big policy announcement from Keir Starmer. Let's start with Kevin in North Yorkshire. Kevin's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Kevin, what do you think of this scheme?
I think it's purely and simply designed to appease the metropolitan elite. I think what he's done there, what I can't get my head around and what I find so frustrating is, in one hand, he turns around and says, in his words, it's there to break the model and to show that if you come over on the boats, that we'll send you back. If that's the case, why on earth didn't they just turn around and agree, for 6 months, we'll send everybody back and see if it stops? Well, they could have done that. They could have said that. For 6 months, we'll do it. But they haven't, because they know that's not what they really want. They want one in, one out, because it appeases the ideological side of the left wing. And it shows that they can still bring people in, still the same amount of people in fact, even more, but look like they're doing something. And all they want to do is stop the boats because of the humanitarian side of it. They're not interested on the financial impact, on the social impact. They're not interested in any of that. It's ideologically led and completely pointless. Like I say, I can't get my head round how we can say we want to break the model and stop them coming across, and the only way to do that is to deter them from coming across. Well, just do that.
Yeah. And if you were coming across on a boat, Kevin, and you had a 1 in 17 chance of being sent back to France, and you could just do the same thing again. I mean, there's no sense that you can't do the same thing again. We're talking about, they might be returned to Spain or Malta or wherever. But actually, if you had a 1 in 17 chance that you'll have a nice plane ride after presumably a very long legal process back to France, I mean, you'd take that risk, wouldn't you?
They've already taken that risk over and over. They've already paid, upwards of £5,000 to do it. They're not going to stop. I can't, like I said, it baffles me how he says on one hand we break the model by deterring them to come, and then say, right, we'll just pull them back and we'll bring one in.
Well, you don't break a model by saying that 1 in 17 people will be stopped doing what they want. Farage has been speaking as well. First of all, Kevin in North Yorkshire, thank you. Farage has been speaking, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, of course. He says this agreement is a humiliation for Brexit Britain. We have acted today as an EU member and bowed down to an arrogant French president. I wonder what you make of what Nigel Farage has been saying there. This agreement is a humiliation for Brexit Britain. We have acted today as an EU member and bowed down to an arrogant French president. Reaction as well from Chris Philp, who is the Shadow Home Secretary. We're going to be talking to one of his deputies in a few minutes' time, Matt Vickers, who is the Shadow Immigration, Crime, Policing and Fire Minister. We'll talk to him. But Chris Philp says Labour's limp returns deal will only remove 1 in every 17 illegal migrants arriving, allowing 94% of illegal immigrants to stay will make no difference whatsoever and will have no deterrent effect. This is the latest catastrophic example of that when Labour negotiates, the UK loses. That's something that Conservatives often say. Starmer's first move in power was to rip up the Illegal Migration Act, scrap the Rwanda Deterrent plan, weaken age checks and reopen the path to citizenship for illegal migrants. This is a green light to people smugglers. Labour's promise to smash the gangs, but in 2025 so far has been the worst year in history for illegal immigrations. Crossing the channel, 44,000 illegal immigrants have crossed since the election. Returning 50 illegal immigrants a week only represents 6% of these arrivals. The Conservatives would restore the Rwanda plan, says Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, which Starmer cancelled just days before it was due to start. This would see 100% of illegal immigrants being immediately removed without judicial process. The Australian example showed that a 100% removal deterrent works. We will do the same here. We've had enough of Starmer's weak and ineffective gimmicks. What does Bernie in Surrey think of all this? Bernie has given me a ring as well, 0344 499 1000. Bernie, are you convinced, or do you agree with Chris Philp that it's a weak and ineffective gimmick?
It's a complete gimmick, Peter. I think the thing that these people don't realise is the cost that they're going to for this charade is not something that the public's going to overlook. You only have to have watched a snippet of Farage trying to speak in the House yesterday.
Shouted down.
Shouted down by both sides. These people think that they're self-righteous and correct in shouting him down.
There was one person, sorry to interrupt you, Bernie, but there was one person behind him who just shouted at Farage and says, "Will you shut up, man?" I mean, this is a member of Parliament elected by the people of Clacton who was asking the Prime Minister a question, and there was just so many people very, very rudely interrupting him, as just I have with you as well, Bernie.
I mean, it's just also there's a microphone somewhere that they must have played around with the microphones because someone who said, Brexit was a lie, you sold them a lie, that was louder than Farage's voice, and there are plenty of microphones there. They could have tuned into him to hear him clearer. So something else was going on there. But the reality is no one in the public believes this, and every bit of condemnation of Farage, who is the only option, and I'm not entirely convinced how viable he is, but he's the only option available. No one is going to fall for this. All this does, every single thing he does, is fuel the fire of reform. And I would put money on the fact that every by-election we have is going to go to reform in the next few years. And there comes a point at which his majority or his credibility will be so stressed that they'll either have to remove him or there's no conference, which obviously it'll take a while for them to win because they need a majority. I mean, the other thing he said that was interesting was he's not going to allow people who've tried to come in illegally to come in legally thereafter. Well, these people come over without identity.
Well, they come illegally anyway, so how are they going to be prevented from coming in illegally? It's a really good point, Bernie.
Are they fingerprinting them? Are they photographing them? Will they be able to recognise them when they come in again? All of this is just nonsense.
Yeah, I totally agree with all your points. Thank you, Bernie. Really appreciate it. That's Bernie in Surrey there. Thanks to Rob, who says, I prophesise that the scheme will be the start of the end of Starmer. Thank goodness. Rob in Dorset, another Rob, says, will Starmer send the returned migrants with a packed lunch and £3,000 in their pocket? Certainly hope not, because that's our money. Colette in Redditch says, so France suddenly knows how to stop the boats and allow French police to intervene in shallow waters, yet all this time they have done virtually nothing. The French could have intervened much sooner and chose not to. Colette, totally agree with that. What have they done with our 771 million quid? Bought a few Stanley knives, pretty expensive Stanley knives. They weren't that expensive the last time I went to B&Q. Lisa has given us a ring from Cardiff. Lisa, what do you make of this?
Oh, Peter, thank you for taking my call, and hats off to you doing such a fabulous job.
Thank you.
The audacity of the Prime Minister. He doesn't credit his public with any, or his working class public, with any intelligence. Does he?
No, he certainly doesn't. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can see loads of flaws in this plan, and it is 90 minutes old.
Awful. It's terrible. And the fact, he's Emmanuel, he's calling Macron Emmanuel. And I think he's trying to be a world,
statesman. He's trying to be a statesman, and he's not.
Yeah,
and the fact that
he's trying, but he's failing. It's just, and of course, let me give you an example. I had a broken tooth. I had to lie to see a dentist. Right? I have to lie because I know I won't see a dentist for months and months and months, and I'm not a liar.
Yeah.
And we are a tiny nation, as we know. Why can't we put the Navy in the sea? We're not currently at war. We might be in the future, but we're not. Why can't we just put the Navy? Let's just turn them back. It's not really that hard.
And certainly, and he yammers on about Ukraine and other borders when he can't control his own, Lisa.
Yes, and of course talking about Palestine as well, which is a terrible. I've got many relatives in Israel because my stepfather was Jewish. It's a terrible situation, but he doesn't he has no idea what he's doing.
Lisa, we've got to go to the news, but thank you for your thoughts there. We're going to talk to Matt Vickers in a second. He's a shadow immigration minister. What does he think about it? Nigel Farage says it's a humiliation for Brexit Britain. What do you think too? 0344 499 1000. We'll take many calls between now and 7 o'clock. Stay with us.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is Drive. It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for everybody who's got in touch. Loads of calls, texts and tweets coming into this building because you want to talk about what Keir Starmer has said on migration. 0344 499 1000. In a second, we're going to talk to the Shadow Immigration Minister, Matt Vickers. What do the Conservatives make of this? Well, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, says the agreement is a humiliation for Brexit Britain. Lots to discuss. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on the main number. All those three things on the main number, 0344 499 1000. Let's get started. Loads to chat about before 7 o'clock when Kevin O'Sullivan takes over. No doubt he'll be talking about this too. So stay with us here on Talk. Really good point from Chris Stokes on Twitter, who says, as for a deterrent, knowing you have a 16 in 17 chance of not being returned isn't going to make a lot of difference to the illegals. I think that just says it in just a few words. Chris has tweeted me. I think that makes perfect sense. I can't see any flaws in that argument, but I can see a lot of flaws in the arguments and the points put forward by Keir Starmer today. Let's just remind ourselves of what he actually set out about 90 minutes ago at that press conference.
So I'm pleased to announce our agreement today on a groundbreaking returns pilot. For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally.
Keir Starmer also announced a crackdown on migrant jobs.
Jobs they've been promised in the UK will no longer exist because of the nationwide crackdown we're delivering on illegal working, which is on a completely unprecedented scale. The President and I have agreed that this pilot will be implemented in coming weeks. That is why today's agreement is so important, because we will solve this, like so many of our problems, by working together. This is our plan together, hard-headed, aggressive action on all fronts, to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and show that by attempting to reach the UK by small boat will only end in failure, detention, and return.
Well, we've heard from the Prime Minister, we've heard from Labour. Let's speak to the Conservatives. Matt Vickers is with us. He's the Shadow Immigration, Crime Policing and Fire Minister. Matt, this is a groundbreaking scheme that is going to halt people coming to this country. It's going to act as a deterrent, and there's going to be a crackdown on those people coming over. What do you make of it?
I think it's utterly ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. We're literally... He's saying you have a 1 in 17 chance of being removed. For every 17 that come in, one person is going to go, and then he's going to put the red carpet out for somebody else. 94% chance of staying. That is insane. I mean, that is not a deterrent. You know, we had this deterrent that was going to play a part in putting people off coming. He's just put the red carpet out. It's utterly balmy. When Labour, whenever they arrive at these negotiation tables, when Keir Starmer pulls up a chair, he must just sit at the wrong end. Whenever they negotiate anything, Britain loses out. We've seen it with Chagos, we've seen it with the US trade deal, we've seen it with everything he did. Fishing waters, it's utterly balmy, ridiculous. It's the worst way forwards possible. We had a deterrent scheme there. There was legislation there that was going to allow people to be detained and allow people to be removed. And the thing is, people are utterly fed up of hearing about it. But it's easy, therefore, to forget that this thing is getting so much worse than it was. 44,000 people have arrived in this country since Labour came to power. That's up nearly 50% on the year. The number of people staying in hotels is up 28%. The number of people who are arriving and being removed, who've arrived illegally, is actually going down. This is absolutely bad. But do you know what? Is there any surprise? Before this guy became Prime Minister, he was out there voting against every measure that was brought forward to toughen up our immigration system. He was writing letters and campaigning to prevent foreign criminals being removed from this country.
Yeah, your scheme and the scheme that you've recommitted to again today, the Rwanda scheme, was only going to take away about 400 people. This scheme will take 50 people a week. So in 8 weeks and 9 weeks, they will have removed more people from this country than you would have through the Rwanda scheme.
Detained and removed. We were not giving people weren't being told, come here. Only 1 in 17 of you is going back. We were going to remove people. We had a deal with...
But only a few hundred.
By the time we would come back, we'll have a deal with anybody. We put in legislation that if you arrive in this country, you will be locked up and you will be removed. Moreover, beyond that, we completely changed the game, and it is now allowing people who've arrived here illegally, who've broken into our country, to become British citizens. That was in law, in black and white. They couldn't do it. He's gone and changed the game. It's utterly ridiculous, and it is going to end in disaster. It's terrifying. It's terrifying.
What do you make about him saying that even if the people come here, or of the people who do come here, their jobs will no longer be there because there'll be a crackdown on those jobs with delivery companies, car washes, nail salons, places where people can work a little bit under the radar?
It's happening in plain sight anyway, and the reality is all these people that he ships back to, I mean, we'll see what the details are, but you move people back to France, they'll be coming back tomorrow for their 1 in 17. It's like some sort of bizarre, it's like having a lottery that you just keep playing till you win. 16 in 17 people, 94% are going to be able to say it's balmy. And then he's creating other safe legal opportunities for people to come to the country. It's just nuts. But the volume, however bad it was, there was some progress being made. Numbers were being curtailed. The number of people in hotels was being taken down. Now it is off the charts. The lid has been lifted, and there's just no sign of any efforts to prevent it. It's a joke, to be quite frank.
I mean, you've said, and your boss, Chris Philp, has said that the Conservatives would restore the Rwanda plan. Is that really the solution here?
Yeah, well, whichever country. The reality is, if you come to this country, you should be detained. You should not be allowed to just disappear off into the sunshine and have a good old, jolly old time and become a British citizen. You should be detained and you should be removed. If that's Rwanda, that's where you're going, and 100% of you are going.
Okay.
I mean, so what happened with that? The reality is, if people know that they get here and they don't get to stay, they will stop coming. It's driven by demand. If they know that they're going to get access to benefits, they know that 16 out of 17 are going to get to have a jolly old time, of course they're going to come. The reality is, when you saw the Albania deal, for instance, people from Albania, it was one of the top places from where people were arriving on our shores illegally. We got the Albania deal in place that meant if you came from Albania illegally, you were getting shipped back. And all of a sudden, overnight virtually, the number of people coming fell by 94%. It's not rocket science. It's been done elsewhere on the globe. We just need to be tougher, and we need to sort it out. We need to stop people thinking there's an incentive to come, and they'll stop coming.
In regard to the 1 in 17, how convinced are you that any of those, that even that 1 in 17 will be sent back? Because I can see human rights lawyers rubbing their hands with glee, saying actually these people won't be sent back. We know even from your figures, and indeed from the figures under this government, that very few people were actually repatriated to either the country they came from or another country.
Starmer's human rights chums, they're the people who held up the Rwanda scheme in the first place. They're the people who dragged the heels and created all this. I mean, there's no chance. And then there's no chance, of the people you remove staying there. They're going back to France. The safe country that is France, that's apparently terrifying everyone else to flee from. They're going back to France. They'll be trying again within days, no doubt, within days.
We will see what happens. I want to just play you a little clip from Morning Glory, our breakfast programme, that Mike Graham was interviewing a former colleague of yours, Sir Jake Berry. This is what Mike and Sir Jake said earlier on today.
I've made a choice. I hope people will respect that choice, and I respect other people who disagree with me, because we are allowed to hold different opinions just about still in this country.
Just about.
There might be a knock on the door next week.
Maybe not in the Houses of Parliament, where they heckle Nigel Farage like he doesn't deserve to be there.
Well, he's got as much right as Keir Starmer to be there. But I've made a choice. The choice I've made is to fight for a Britain that I believe in. I'm absolutely certain that it's a shared vision with Nigel Farage and reform. Of course, just like friends, there'll be stuff we don't agree on everything. But, my choice is to fight for a better Britain. I think the only way that can be delivered is with a reform government. We have got to find a way to rebuild a Britain we can believe in, to stand tall on the global stage. We're permanently lectured. We should be ashamed of our history. We should be giving, British sovereign territory like the Chagos Islands away because we're slightly embarrassed about how we, hundreds of years ago may have come by. That is not acting in the best interest of Britain. It's not in the best interest of the British people. It's time for change.
Sir Jake Berry there, the former chairman of your party, Matt Vickers. Will you lament his defection to Reform UK?
I don't know Jake particularly well, but he was a chum, he was a colleague, seen him in the bar, he's a friendly guy, seems a nice chap. But actually, I think Kemi gave her version this morning, her view of the world. She said that, some people join politics to play the game and to get elected and are happy to hitch themselves to any bandwagon that might come along that might help them do that. Jake was a Remainer, wasn't he, as I understand it, and now is signed up to...
So he's hitching himself to the bandwagon of Reform UK?
Well, he obviously thinks that's in his interest to sign up. That's a choice for Jake. My view is, I'm a Conservative. I've seen the pitch that we're making today, that fundamental difference between us and Reform on benefits. They want to lift the two-child cap. We actually think the benefit system should be much more stringent and rigorous, and actually should deliver value for the taxpayers and the people in this country who pay into the system. That's a real dividing line today, and it's very, very clear.
The fact is, though, that Jake Berry is like many people who have voted for or indeed been members and even elected members of your party, the Conservative Party. They're going towards Reform UK. They're beating you hands down in the polls in many by-elections, in many council elections and so on. Jake Berry is just doing what an awful lot of Conservative supporters are doing. They're not convinced by your message, Matt Vickers.
Well, do you know what? We got sent a message by the electorate a year ago. We've just ourselves down, we're looking at it, we're seeing what people have said. We've made a big pitch today on policy around welfare and very clear difference between us and the opposition. It's the sort of thing that people in my constituency are worried about, the fact they're being taxed to death and it's being given away to others with very little questions asked. I think, do you know what? We've got a long time to make the offer. We've got to get on with it. We've got to set out our policy, our vision, and what we're pitching to the public. And Reform will do their bit and see where we end up. It's early days. We've got lots of time. Anybody who thought that overnight this party could rebuild itself was in cloud cuckoo land. Of course it was going to take time. Of course it was going to take time listening to the public and redeveloping our policy platform and our offering to the British public.
Just on another Reform UK member, Nigel Farage, he says this agreement that was signed today with the French, he says it's a humiliation for Brexit Britain. We have acted today as an EU member and bowed down to an arrogant French president. Do you agree with that?
I think it's shambolic. I think the agreement is utterly shambolic. I think in a few months' time we're going to be banging our heads off the table again, although it's got to that point where we're so frustrated and the public are so frustrated by the situation that it's completely out of control. Any progress that was being made in controlling this situation has completely disappeared.
Matt, thank you. That is Matt Vickers, MP, who's the Shadow Immigration, Crime Policing and Fire Minister. He's also the Conservative MP for Stockton West. I was wrong earlier. Jake Berry, who I worked with, I was convinced he was a leaver. He actually campaigned for Remain and in 2018 said he was wrong. So I was wrong about that. Apologies, I made a factual error there. Happens every now and again, certainly in a 3-hour programme, so apologies for that. But yes, Jake Berry, he originally campaigned for Remain. He then said in 2018 he was wrong on that, so he's changed his mind on that, and he's also changed his mind on the Conservatives. So he's moved to Reform UK and spoke to Mike this morning, and you can of course see those clips on our social media at talkTV, or you could even go back and watch all of Mike's programme again if you want to on our website talk.tv. But stick with us for the next 45 minutes because we're going to certainly chat to many people who have reacting live now to this deal that has been done between the Conservatives and between the Labour government, I should say, apologies, another error, Labour government and the French government. Rob says, I may have missed all the details about this latest Starmer fiasco, but I'd be very interested to find out how much free money the French are going to see. Great show, mate. Well, Rob, thank you. And 771 million is what they've got already. We don't know how much this is going to cost. We don't know how effective it's going to be. We don't know when it's going to start. We don't know how these people are going to be selected. We don't know what's going to happen in regard to the family links. That's something that Starmer didn't even talk about at all. Jedi Master, I'm not sure that's their real name, says this new migrant idea won't work. You'll get a group of professional migrants that come over and then get sent back. The same ones will come over, back, and repeat. Every time that happens, we get one more legal migrant here to stay. It is utter Nonsense. Sandra in Hampshire says, if Matt Vickers was my MP, I'd been in the surgery every week because he's gorgeous, says Sandra in Hampshire. I'm not sure that's really what I was talking about with Matt Vickers, but listen, that's fine. Tony from Bournemouth here says that the UK-France so-called deal is just like the Emperor's New Clothes. There is nothing there at all. It is a shameful effort. And Neil says, no one has asked how much is this so-called deal going to cost. The taxpayer, we've already given France £750 million for absolutely sod all. We'll get more of your opinions in just a second after the break here on Talk.
Individual clinicians working incredibly hard are stressed out, burnt out. That is true. Is the system as a whole using the commitment of the people who work for it in an efficient way? Absolutely not. And the people who are the expert witnesses on that are the clinicians themselves, who feel that their time isn't being used properly. And therefore, it's a leadership and a management issue.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including people on Twitter as well. Lots of those messages, including from Timber Wolf, who says, when we return one illegal asylum seeker and get legal in return, what happens if they don't meet the criteria we put in place? If they're not a doctor or a dentist, where do they go then? Angela said, total word salad from Starmer Peter. No detail because he doesn't know how the 50 will be chosen. Paul says, British people are living homeless on the streets of Britain because Keir Starmer doesn't regard British people as his priority. British people are homeless because Starmer is more interested in Gaza, a place over which he has no control or say whatsoever. Dawn says the new system is migrant laundering. Another person says, Ash says the ludicrous idea and concept will be shambolic in delivery, if any. Human rights lawyers are already grinning with glee. Anne says, what is Keir giving away this time? And Ray says the one in will probably have his family with him, 1 out, 12 in. The gangs will be laughing, arranging for a person to get the details of someone in England to say it's their uncle. And Dave in Poolgate says if these illegal migrants, Peter, were stopped from entering the EU, then they wouldn't be in France trying to get to us. This is an EU problem. Let's hear a voice note from Pete in Lancashire.
I think decisions like this today, it should go through us. It should go through the voting public, mate, because we wouldn't vote for that, would we? He's an absolute idiot. He just has his pants down at every opportunity.
Pete, thanks for your thoughts on that. Steve in Yorkshire.
Just listening to all of that, and one thing comes to my mind. All the care and no idea. Oh my God, we're doomed.
Steve, thanks for that pretty pessimistic thoughts there. Jamie in Hornchurch?
If there's a boatload of 18 coming in and one gets pulled out, all they will do is try on the next boatload of 18. And the ones that do get kicked out and do go through the schemes will just end up here on a fast track to their own place to live, a national insurance number and legal status. So I fail to see how this is going to be a deterrent. If anything, it is going to be more of an incentive.
Jamie, thanks for your thoughts on that. Let's go to Stephen in Cambridgeshire. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Stephen, are you convinced?
No, mate. So let me get this right. The French escort them to the middle of the channel, yeah? And they sit there and wait for Border Force and the RNLI to come and pick them up. And then they bring them to Britain, and then we get to send one back.
I think it's not even that. I think they just come by themselves in those small boats. Then they get lifted, apparently, on the beaches. We'll see if that actually happens. They get detained, and we have this one in, one out scheme. The question I don't know the answer to, Stephen, is what happens to the other 16 people?
Well, it's not even that. So if the ones in France that have been proven to be eligible to come here, have they got all their documents?
Well, exactly. And if they say they've got links to family, how do we check those links? How do we make sure those people are legitimate? And what happens?
Yeah, but the other thing is, Peter, if they've got all their documents, why have none of the others got all their documents?
Yeah, well,
when
exactly.
they arrive here?
Exactly. No, look, I think Keir Starmer is banking on people to look at this, say, right, might be lifted, might be sent back to France, therefore I'm not going to do it. I mean, that is just not going to happen, Stephen, is it?
No, mate, no. And what's worrying me is he's going down a very slippery slope, because he's pushing people to a point where it's just going to get out of hand.
Some of our people, our viewers and listeners, saying that this is actually a point of almost rejoining the EU. Is that something that you're worried about?
Yeah. Well, why would he stand on stage today and go, this is my personal friend? Lord Hermer is his personal friend, who gave away the Chagos Islands.
Yep.
Doesn't this point to a bit of an arc in one direction?
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Hermer, I think, is the most dangerous man in government. Listen, thanks for your thoughts, Stephen. All very sensible. Stuart's been in touch and says, good afternoon, Peter. I can just imagine how Macron and his team must be laughing their heads off on the way back to France, turning Starmer over like a kipper. Once again, it's so embarrassing to be British these days, says Stuart. James in Devon says, so Starmer says we don't want to blame game or finger pointing for irregular migration. I think he means illegal. Yet Macron spent most of his speech telling us off for Brexit. It's our fault. Matt Vickers says, Keith, if you're so indignant and outraged about Starmer's deal, how come in 14 years your guys did nothing? Jake Berry was right to jump to Reform UK. That is Keith in Troon there. Alan's in Canterbury and has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Alan, what do you make of this?
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
Just tell me, am I missing a trick or something? Have we not already reached a stage when a national emergency should be declared?
A lot of people agree with you on that, Alan.
Yeah, this is a failed scheme, and it's going to be just like revolving doors for illegals to keep on returning. Starmer is an embarrassment. He is weak and afraid to put his head above the parapet. So, and I'm now convinced that as a result of public opinion, he'll be out on his ear before Christmas now.
Do you agree with Nigel Farage, Alan, when he says this agreement is a humiliation for Brexit Britain? We have acted today. Let me just finish it. We have acted today as an EU member and bowed down to an arrogant French president.
Yeah, I agree with everything with Nigel. It's great he's carrying the torch for us. But my only worry is long term, there's a danger of this resulting in public disorder.
Yeah, well, let's hope that doesn't happen, Alan. Listen, thanks for your thoughts. Really appreciate that, Alan in Canterbury there. And Anne says, if the Greek government can turn the boats back, why can't we? The illegal economic migrants invade our country en masse, so why can we not deport them en masse? Utter contempt for the British taxpayer. It's disgusting, says Anne. Let's hear another voice note from Sharon on the migrant deal.
Regarding the latest today from Mr. Starmer, does this man not care about his reputation? Why does he want to go down in history as the Prime Minister who plunged Britain into crisis? This is not the behaviour of a normal, rational person.
Thank you for your thoughts there, Sharon. You can get your voice on the air as well, either through a voice note or give me a ring. The number for both is 0344 499 1000. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on that. What's on the tip of your tongue? What do you think of this migration deal? Do you think it's going to help in any way? Is it going to be a deterrent? Are people actually going to be sent back, or are the human rights lawyers going to put the kibosh on that? What do you think? 0344 499 1000. You can text me as well, 87222. Tweets coming in thick and fast. I'm going to look at those on the break as well. You can tweet me at Peter Cardwell. You can send a message at talkTV as well. Loads of ways of getting in touch, because this is a big development. The government says this is going to solve the problem. Keir Starmer says we're going to stop the small boats. What do you think? Is he right? Do you agree with him? Or do you think this will just be more hot air from Starmer? Let me know your thoughts. Stay with us here on Talk. We'll get a sneak preview inside the Sun in a second. Then I'll take a load more calls right up to 7 o'clock when Kevin O'Sullivan's coming on. I don't think he's particularly going to like this. I was chatting to him out in the office a minute ago. We'll see what he has to say just before 7 as well. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very interesting detail from Politico, which is one of the sort of newsletters that comes out in the evening for nerds like me who love politics. They have said the government officials have suggested the scheme accepting arrivals from France will prioritise nationalities most prone to targeting from people smugglers. An online platform will be created for people to express interest. Well, we'll see what happens there, but certainly this deal could well be doomed to fail. The Sun tomorrow is going to talk about a week's worth of returns arrived by dawn in just one boat, and it's absolutely right. John Lucas is with us, the night news editor at the Sun. I'm just not convinced by this. What about the other 16 people as well? There's so many questions, aren't they? And you'll be answering some of them, or at least attempting to get an answer in some of them, in the paper tomorrow.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, look, I've not seen what our leader is going to say. Our leader column tomorrow is going to say. But
the opinion of the paper.
The opinion of the paper. But I think this deal's going to be seen broadly as fairly wishy-washy. He doesn't seem to answer all of the questions, and we've been there this week. And just today, we watched in the channel as a boat. So we're going to send 50 back. A week, yeah, presumably. Yeah. We've watched today just on one boat alone, 78 have come over.
So it's not even one whole boat will be sent back.
Exactly. So that's one boat, and that's escorted there by the French.
It's not even stopping the boat.
And not stopping the boat, and it's a mid-channel exchange with our border force, who then bring them back. And what happens? We give the French back the life jackets for the next lot to come. It's all very cordial.
Yeah.
But it's bizarre. It's not going to solve it. In total, I think there's 250 have landed today. So that's, over.
So only 1 in 5 in the day would hypothetically go back in this scheme.
And does it even solve the issue anyway? Because it's still, yes, the people who will then come in according to this deal are people who've got family members here. But I mean, it doesn't change the base number, does it?
Yeah.
And there's questions about, well, they're going to be detained while they're here, but where are they being detained? They're still going to be put up in hotels. Anyway, we've been there. I mean, there's issues that we can see on the ground which people wouldn't necessarily be aware of. So one problem that we've seen is the smuggler gangs adapting to the French, trying to tackle them more on the beaches.
Yeah.
So they're actually running essentially taxi services, and they will go along to less well-patrolled beaches. They're going through canal routes as well, and they're picking people up on the way. It's very, very organised and difficult to stop. So
this is always what happens, John, isn't it? We innovate, they innovate, we innovate, they innovate.
Yeah.
Originally it was trains, then it was lorries, and there's still some people coming across in lorries, then it's the small boats. Whatever we do, they always, and they're more determined, more sophisticated, and of course there's a lot of money behind this as well.
Yeah, but and also some of the mad things. I mean, there was supposed to be a ban on the shops there selling things like buoyancy aids and inflatable boats to help the migrants. But we've been there, we've seen it. The shops are selling this stuff again, and we've watched migrants queue up and pay for kayaks and dinghies and stuff like that. Also, some of the more sort of disturbing aspect of this is they don't really have the big camps like they used to have. So a lot of them are just camping out in the forests, completely and utterly lawless, and they're being run by these criminal gangs. So we've got Kurdish, Somali and Afghan gangs out there, and they're carrying out punishment shootings, kneecappings essentially, they're settling feuds, or they're punishing people who are trying to make their own independent crossings.
Yeah.
So surely you'd think the French should be able to target these gangs, round up these people. It's not just about stopping the boats, slashing the boats.
It's control of people.
It's controlling the people.
Yeah.
They've got organised criminal mafias in the country. We need the French to go after them as well. And not just that, I know there's been a bit of Macron did a bit of Brexit bashing today as well, but don't forget, all of these people are transiting right the way through the EU.
Yeah.
So it's not even just about France, it's about the whole bloc.
And that whole question about whether it's actually worth our while signing an agreement with France when it's a whole EU issue as well, which thankfully we're not part of anymore. John, lots coming in the Sun tomorrow, in your copy of the Sun tomorrow. I want to talk about another story that you're covering, a horrible story about a man who was attacked outside a very prestigious and expensive hotel in London for his watch. What happened?
Yeah, so this is a very, very sad story. So this happened about 9:30 last night. He's a 24-year-old man, dad of one. He was outside the Park Tower Hotel in Knightsbridge, so it's just yards from Harvey Nichols' department store. Now, what witnesses reported seeing is a masked man has approached him and he's trying to wrestle his watch. I'm not sure exactly what the watch is, but we've seen pictures, very, very
expensive
nice, expensive timepiece.
And
very sadly, this chap is called Blue Stevens, and he was stabbed in the chest, and It's very distressing reports about, he was with his partner, so this is right in front of his partner, about efforts to save his life there, and sadly not successful, and they're still hunting this knife man. Now, that won't necessarily be the motive, there could be something else there, but I mean, this is just indicative of things we're seeing all the time in London.
Yeah.
There were 70,000 phone thefts the previous year.
Yeah.
We've heard, every week we hear about another celebrity or rich person. We had, it wasn't long ago, Selena Scott said that she was mugged and
stabbed in the leg.
Stabbed in the leg.
Yeah.
We've had other actors and actresses. Famously, Aled Jones was mugged for his Rolex in London, and it's just sort of indicative of the the lawlessness and the boldness of some of the capital's criminals.
Honestly, part of why I have an old iPhone with a cracked screen, don't wear a watch and don't wear any jewellery, part of it is because of that. And I try not to be a target, but you shouldn't have to live your life that way.
No, it's absolutely.
Loads of people, I know, talking to people in the newsroom, in your newsroom as well, in another part of the building, there'll be loads of people who've had their phones stolen, something like 1 in 3 people in London, to say nothing of the rest of the country as well. Tell us about this story, which, great headline, Scam-a-lot, ? Tell us about this.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, if this turns out to be true, this is going to be the Sun's scoop of the century. A Canadian tourist, there's a chap called John Goodwin, who was here from Alberta, and he wanted to visit Tintagel in Cornwall, obviously the traditional home of King Arthur and all those chaps, the Round Table and all that.
Knights of the Round Table,
Knights of the Round Table, and he was trekking through the hills, and he saw something sticking out of the ground, and his curiosity was piqued, and he sort of dug through and pulled it up, and it was a skull, very well preserved skull could well be a horse,
right,
with a large horn sticking out from the centre.
What, like a unicorn?
Just like a unicorn.
Okay.
And he's got very excited, this guy. I think he's very much into his myths and legends.
Okay.
And he actually took it to the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Bowcastle, as you would do. He was told, I imagine the bloke in the shop's a bit like the comic book guy in The Simpsons. He said, well, that's not magic. He said, that's just a freak animal, it's not magic. But he also took it down to a local pub. The locals went mad for it. They're all convinced that it's an actual real unicorn. You see the picture in the paper, it's very good.
I mean, isn't a unicorn a mythical creature? I mean, what do you think?
Well, it could be. Well, I think it's still to be determined. This has been the week-long baby of our district man, Alex West.
Okay.
He's been
on this story for a whole week.
He's been on this for a whole week.
So what happens for you? This is my question. What happens for you, John, as one of the news editors, when you say, we're going to print this, we think it has, we think this has legs, and then you find out maybe next week it doesn't, it actually maybe is something that's made up. I mean, originally it had caliber, then it would have Excalibur, perhaps.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we've actually got the Natural History Museum looking into it for us. So
brilliant.
We will find out whether.
I want the carbon dating.
Yeah,
I want that to happen.
Absolutely.
Especially of the unicorn's horn. That is fantastic. Well, I'm very interested in that story and all the others you mentioned. All of it in the Sun tomorrow. John, thank you. That's John Lucas, night news editor of the Sun. Plenty in there, of course, on migration. Loads of people want to get in on that. Plenty of calls, texts, and tweets coming through as well. One person says, "Good evening, Peter. France has just announced there's going to be a song in the next Eurovision called 'It's Like Taking Candy from a Baby.' Gordon in Taunton says, 'Mark my words, the ones earmarked for return will stay on. Endless appeals, but the ones sent for France will still come together with their families. The only single constant we have been subjected to from this government is incompetence. The anger in this country is palpable.' Thank you, Peter," says Gordon. And Ange says, "This is just the EU dispersion programme by the back door. Starmer is a traitor to the British people. Why can't we mount a legal challenge on the government for failing in its primary duty to secure our borders?" Well, maybe the lawyers aren't there. All the human rights lawyers are probably going to be against this. We'll get your thoughts on all of this. If you want to get your voice on the air between now and 7 o'clock, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
individual clinicians working incredibly hard are stressed out, burnt out. That is true. Is the system as a whole using the commitment of the people who work for it in an efficient way? Absolutely not. And the people who are the expert witnesses on that are the clinicians themselves, who feel that their time isn't being used properly. And therefore, it's a leadership and a management issue.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Christina on Twitter, who says, when will you realise this is how Starmer wants it to be? Crush out the life and soul out of our country. Eventually, there's nothing left to save. Well, Keir Starmer certainly has been setting out the migrant deal. What do you think of it? In the next 15 minutes, we're going to get a reaction from an awful lot of people, and as many as we can fit in. Let's just remind ourselves of what the Prime Minister said about the deal earlier on today.
So I'm pleased to announce our agreement today on a groundbreaking returns pilot. For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally.
The Prime Minister also said there'd be a crackdown on jobs for illegal migrants in this country already. We know loads of them are getting delivery driver jobs, for example, illegally. Sometimes, maybe it's happened to you, it certainly happened to me, where you get one of those deliveries from Uber Eats or Deliveroo or one of those kind of companies. You think one person's going to come, they say the name of the person who's going to come and a photograph of them. Turns up it's not them. Well, those people are almost certainly illegally employed, this sort of subcontracting. Prime Minister says he's going to crack down on that. Car washes, nail salons, all that kind of stuff. This is what he said.
Jobs they've been promised in the UK will no longer exist because of the nationwide crackdown we're delivering on illegal working, which is on a completely unprecedented scale. The President and I have agreed that this pilot will be implemented in coming weeks. That is why today's agreement is so important, because we will solve this, like so many of our problems, by working together. This is our plan together, hard-headed, aggressive action on all fronts, to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and show that by attempting to reach the UK by small boat will only end in failure, detention and return.
Well, in the next 14 minutes, I'm going to try to get as many voices on the air before Kevin O'Sullivan comes up at 7 o'clock to get your reaction to this. Lots of reaction coming into the building. You want to get your voice part of that? 0344 499 1000. Danny's in London. Danny, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I don't understand something. Perhaps you can explain it to me. Right, a migrant comes over here and we send them back. So then we get one in return.
Yeah.
So who's going to look after him when he comes over? Has he got his own place? Does he stay in a hotel? And if that's the fact, how are we benefiting from it?
We haven't got the detail of that, Danny, and we know that it's people coming over, although they didn't mention it at the press conference today, will have family links here. But whether they stay with the family, whether we have to put them up, whether you have to deal with that, give them benefits, give them a job, I don't know. And I think there's still an awful lot of questions in this, don't you?
It's just a publicity stunt, isn't it? Let's be honest. There's 90,000 people waiting to have their cases heard. What's going to happen to them?
Well, yeah, exactly. And the processing, they say they're going to be detained very, very quickly and sent back to France very quickly. Well, if the processing is taking so long already at the moment, why won't that take a long time? When does this actually start? There's so many questions here, Danny.
And also, one last, I know you're busy.
No, go ahead, Danny, take your time.
No, right,
it's okay.
Okay, we want to deport whoever he comes over here. Then he gets his human rights lawyer in, then on our legal aid.
Yep.
So then what do we do? Then that stops it, doesn't it? Well,
I think that's absolutely right, Danny, and I think human rights lawyers are going to be rubbing their hands with glee with this, because they will know that there'll be a load of new cases of people we want to deport. I wonder, I do wonder how many people are actually going to be sent to France. And 50 a week, I don't think that can happen anytime soon.
And even if it does, how are we benefiting? One out, one in. So I don't understand it. But that's just me. And maybe I'm completely
No.
wrong.
You're not missing the point. You're not missing the point at all, Danny. There is no material benefit to us. What we know is that someone who is here illegally will be deported, and that's supposedly deterrent. But someone who wants to come here legally, who is an asylum seeker, will come here if they've been deemed in France to be a genuine asylum seeker. But it's still an asylum seeker at the end of the day.
It's unbelievable. And then we've got to give them all the benefits. I don't understand it. I'm sorry. This government are mad. They are, honestly.
Danny, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate them. Lynette is in London as well. Lynette, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't really know where to start. I think we all need to stop having a go at Keir Starmer, because I've found something that he can do well.
I'm all ears.
And it's U-turns. So I'm quite happy to pick him up in my Fiat 500.
Right.
Take him down to Dover, and I'm sure I can get quite a few hundred people to join me and turn the boats around ourselves.
So you would lead the U-turns in your Fiat 500?
Yes, I'm quite happy to pick the PM up. I don't need no posh dinners, 120 people.
You won't even
I'll buy him a bacon sandwich.
You won't even ask him for petrol money, Lynette.
No.
That's very kind of you. Do you think he'll take you up on your very kind offer?
I doubt it, because he's a coward. I'm British. I'm not European. I'm a British citizen. We should control our own borders. We can change the law to release all these dangerous criminals that we're releasing early. Can we not change the law to allow a vote of no confidence from the people for this Prime Minister that I'm ashamed of? And the King has also shamed us this week with the open border comments.
Yeah.
And
were you disappointed in the King, Lynette?
I'm very disappointed with the King.
Okay.
I think the Queen must be turning in her grave.
She stayed out of politics very, very effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Lynette, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate them. Dave in South Gloucester says, Lamy has capitulated to the EU by allowing Spanish border guards to control and process immigration into Gibraltar, a sovereign British territory, which could see guards from a foreign power refuse entry to British citizens. At the same time, Spanish citizens walk in unchecked and unhindered. If the EU foreign power can do this in our territory, then why can't we send our troops and officials to France to join in the prevention of illegal immigration? One in, one out, one in, plus numerous family members and dependents, says Dave. Mark in Selby says, if Macron was truly our friend, then he would let our border force military or even public patrol French beaches to stop the boats. I would be up for it, and I'm certain I'm not alone. Of course, Macron would not do such a thing, as he is not our friend and just wants to illegally dump his problem on our shores. Another person says, has anyone noticed the word pilot in Starmer's speech? Yes, that's right. They may scrap this. This may not go ahead. They'll do a little bit of it, see if it works, and then maybe do a U-turn on that as well. Maybe Lynette could give them a lift in that one too. Nick says the only way to save this country is one in 20 million out. Nick says, if you listen to Starmer's words, for the one we send back, we get one checked and vetted. This implies that the other 16 are not vetted or checked, and he seems happy with this. Total madness, says Nick. Couldn't agree more. Lucy's in Shropshire. Lucy, you're on the air. What would you like to say?
Well, thank you, Peter. I'd just like to say I can't understand why we're even bothering to listen or discuss this latest suggestion from the Prime Minister. It's been obvious for years that no government of either colour has any intention of stopping mass immigration, and I'd really like us all to just accept that at the beginning of the day and not waste time talking about brilliant ideas about how to stop the boats, because if they wanted to stop the boats, they would have done it years ago. And the question really is why? Why do they want to destroy the nation? I'd just love it if you could ask him that, really.
What do you think? What do you think the answer is?
Well, I have no idea. I mean, just literally no idea. Big business, I mean, somebody wants it, but no person, no ordinary citizen wants this.
The thing that really worries me, Lucy, is that he thinks this is a good idea and this will help, and that his vision for Britain is the right one. I mean, to become
He doesn't think it. He doesn't think it. He knows it's nonsense. He's taking us for fools. It's insulting. I mean, you're talking about it all day as if it's a serious proposition. I mean, it clearly isn't. It's utter nonsense.
Lucy, thanks for your thoughts. That's Lucy in Shropshire there. Emma's in London. Oh, Emma, what do you think?
I think this is a ridiculous idea. Because what happened is when the last government was in, he said, stop the boats. Completely stop the boats and everything. And when I'm going out, me and my mum going out alone, these loads of illegal migrants come in. They try to cause accidents in the car. I had an accident. They pull a fast one. They threaten. Basically, I'm a British citizen, born to Asian parents, Indian parents.
Mm-hmm.
We pay our taxes.
Mm-hmm.
We do everything, even though I'm not working and everything. I try to help out.
Mm-hmm.
But when I go out, so many illegal migrants, the people just open the door, have an accident, call the police and everything, and nothing happens.
There's a lot of scams around that, aren't there? We've covered this in my programmes before, where people deliberately drive into you to try to get compensation from you. Often they're not insured.
Yeah, no, this person was insured. She hasn't even gone to an insurance company.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry.
I went to my insurance company straight away. They said, do you want to go through insurance? I said, no, I don't want to go through insurance. This is my dad's insurance. I'll pay the full thing myself. The insurance company said, okay, fine, we'll close the books on your site and we'll wait till the thing. Yeah. But keep the receipts that you've paid for.
Mm-hmm.
So this happened about 2 weeks ago. Till this day, we have not got a letter from her insurance company.
Listen, I think a lot of people have dealt with that, Emma, and I'm really sorry to hear that's been your experience. I don't know what the answer is to that particular scam, and there are a lot of people who are here not legally in this country who are taking part in it. I'm sorry to hear you've been a victim of that. Paula's in High Barnet. Paula, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello, my lovely. Peter. Hi. 3 things. First thing is my colleague is French. She has said to me, Macron is the most unpopular president in a long time, number 1. Number 2, they do have people working illegally over there. Let's just get that out there, Macron. Number 2, around 2006, I was coming through Germany, going through France. We came in a people carrier with the tinted windows because we had a lot of stuff, coming over. Not once did the French side check our vehicle. And finally, number 3, I don't think Starmer has any intention of resolving this. I think there's a part of me thinks he wants the next big vote. You're going to get them over here in thousands. He wants to get them over here and eventually get them the papers and that they can have access to voting. That I think. And also I think also cheap labour. We talk about slavery, but this is cheap labour and they're allowing this. And that's why I don't think he will completely put a stop to it. I think he's trying to appease the public and calm them down, but I don't think the intention is to stop them, almost to the point of making this the norm. That's what I think. He's going to make this the norm, and eventually we'll get used to it, and we'll just say, okay, we can't do anything about it, and it'll be the norm. They're coming over on ferries. Next it'll be ferries. That's how I see it.
And there's so many people who really have given loads of solutions, even this afternoon. But I've been presenting these programs now for 4 years, and there are loads of different people who have given various solutions, various ideas at various times, and it just doesn't seem that the government is listening.
Peter, can I just say one more thing? In regards to how we hear that they throw their passports away, their ID away.
Yeah.
Why aren't we using people who are skilled interpreters? Because they must speak a certain language. They must have people who can recognise accents. Surely that
facial recognition technology as well, Paula. I mean, they've actually not using that nearly as much as what the Conservatives wanted them to do in that regard. They scaled that back, which I think is a huge mistake. Also, age verification aspects as well. I mean, if you have someone who says I'm under 18 and some of them are just so obviously not, but there are many people who sort of pretend they are. Paula, thanks for your thoughts there. Alan is in Cheshire, final call of the day for Talk Drive, but of course Kevin's coming after 7. Alan, what do you think?
Peter, thanks so much for your time. First time caller, a bit nervous, but thank you.
Don't be nervous, just tell us what you think. It's okay.
So my concern is, obviously there's migrants and illegal immigration, which is obviously a big concern in the country at the moment in time. However, the benefit system that we've actually got to the moment in time needs complete reform. if you look at the statutory sick pay rulings, for individuals qualified for statutory sick pay, they've got to be above the lower earnings limit of national insurance. So therefore, they've got to have paid into the state before they actually get anything from the state.
Yeah.
And what is your views upon that?
Well, I think that's a perfectly reasonable idea. I think there are some benefits that people get. You know, you get NHS care from birth, for example. Obviously, you're not going to pay into the system as a baby. But no, I think overall, as an adult, if you haven't paid in, you shouldn't get anything back. I think that's a very straightforward thing, and there are many countries where the system is a lot stricter on that. Alan, we'll have more of a chat, I hope, on another occasion. Do give me a ring, maybe tomorrow or during my weekend shows. In the meantime, Kevin O'Sullivan is here.
Hello, Peter.
Kevin, I know that you think Keir Starmer is such an amazing man, and I know you're completely convinced by this brilliant scheme.
It's just, I just don't get it. And who those journalists in that press conference? Questions. How do you choose the 1 in 17
perfectly
migrant?
legitimate question.
Does he not predict that once our immigration lawyers get their claws into this, there may be legal difficulties? And then when our migrants go back to France, what happens?